Happy Friday, everybody. Yes, a very good morning to you. We are live from Johannesburg. Beautiful winter's day here in Johannesburg today. It's nice to be on the half-out, isn't it?
Lovely temperatures, of course. Lovely day before we get into winter, of course.
Yeah, but we've got a hot topic today. Tell you about that. We're talking about church and religion, and you guys are tweeting us feverishly about this already. Of course, should the two ever mix? Well, some say they can never even be divided on this.
And that's why we're asking you that question, of course. We want you to engage with us on the poll. We're going to put it up for you there so you can see it. There's the poll. Should the church or churches get involved in politics? That's the question we pose to you today. 119 votes in even 60% are saying no, the church should not.
You know, South Africa is much more religious than the global standard. I'm surprised by that because up to 85% of South Africans identify themselves as Christian. And these numbers then don't add up, do they?
They don't add up, but it's the start of the beginning of the day, so let's take a look. You have 23 hours left to vote.
Maybe Christians don't want the church involved in politics, and maybe the church just feels it's their duty. Anyhow, you guys are tweeting us. Let's have a look at what you're telling us.
There's one coming from Rosina, says, yes, why not? Churches has been involved in politics for a long time. They even helped ending apartheid. Well, there you go, Rosina.
Peter Mofokeng says they must be involved, just as in apartheid days. Churches are part of society. They get affected by political decisions.
This one from Rulama says, no way. That's it. Short, sweet, to the point.
Onuke Christian says there is nothing bad about it. Look at all majority Islamic countries. Islam plays a strong role. In India today, the Hindu party is in power, etc. So Onuke argues there's actually benchmarks for this.
Well, this one coming from Tefudu says that is a conflict of interest.
Wow, ethics. Who guides us? What are the guiding principles? These are interesting things. Of course, one of our very religious leaders here in South Africa, they say one of the most powerful men in the country, pastor himself, well, he was chucked out of Zimbabwe. He was checked out of Zambia in the last 24 hours on Africa Day, Elvis. So
on Africa Day, where we talk about Africa Day, where we need to unite, where we have to be tolerant, where we don't want dictators. But this is what happened in Zambia, so we're asking you the question. The DA leader, Musa Mamani, was deported from Zambia on Africa Day yesterday. So what are your thoughts on that matter?
A birdie whispered in my ear and told me it was visa problems. What do you make of these visa problems that was had? JJ tells us that means no liberation in Zambia, says JJ.
Siwale says we should first know why he was deported. Well, there's a question there.
And then the analyst, Trevino, tells us, he says, them assaulting him was wrong, but they have a right to deport him. Maybe Africa doesn't like him. Besides, he went to apartheid Israel. Ooh, it's getting hot in here. Of course, Musi Mamani's got a 10:30 today. He's got a news conference. I didn't know he was assaulted.
Well, I don't know about the assault. I think that's something different. I think he was just accosted.
Accosted?
Yes.
Well, at 10:30 today, he's expected to talk and tell us. We also have to be live in Parliament because the new communications minister, he's doing the budget vote there today. So that would be interesting to see where this industry of ours is going in the next 5 to 10 years. Anyhow, we'll try and be on top of all of those for you today, Elvis. But there's a lot of news on this Friday, isn't there?
So let's get down to business. The Democratic Alliance has called on government to swiftly intervene after the party leader, Musi Mamani, was deported from Zambia. Eskom has confirmed that it has been served with court papers in the case brought on by the DA and the EFF against its CEO, Brian Molefe. And 15 people, including a local television drama actor, will appear in court today for alleged human trafficking in Gauteng. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get there, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. The weekend is around the corner.
Now, the weekend is here, my lady.
Is it here, my lady? Eh?
I'd like to find out where you're going to focus. We've got the relegation battle happening in the PSL. We've got Stormers, Sharks, Derby, quite a lot. We've got Formula One. What is your focus, Evan?
Well, my focus will be on the Farmers at Sun City because that's where I'm heading for the weekend. But I'm going to be watching, it'll be interesting to watch Monaco. I'm watching Monaco and I'm watching the Indy 500 because they're both kind of the pinnacle of the sport, and be interesting to see them both.
Now, very interesting. Yourself, Elvis?
This weekend is not a sporting weekend for me, unfortunately.
Ah, right. He's going to the Summers as well. I didn't get an invite. I need to get him to these guys' address books. Good morning to you. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. It's the last match day of the 2016-2017 PSL season, and the relegation battle is going down to the wire with any of 4 teams in danger of being dropped. South African rugby fans are in for a treat this weekend as the Stormers blow into the Shark Cage at Durban, determined to deny the hosts a playoff spot. And Formula 1 Championship leader Sebastian Vettel lays down a marker in practice, roaring to the fastest ever lap in Monaco ahead of the famed street race on Sunday. All this and more I've got for you later on in the Sports Bulletin. For now, it is back to Elvis, who's got the news.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this hour. Cabinet is seeking guidance on how to deal with problems of state-owned enterprises such as Eskom. Now, yesterday, it appointed an interministerial committee to investigate the re-employment of Brian Molefe as the Chief Executive Officer at Eskom. The committee will be made up of the Ministers of Public Enterprises, Energy and Finance, with the Minister of Justice, Michael Masuta, as the convener. Opposition parties in Parliament have accused the Public Enterprises Minister, Lynn Brown, of failing to exercise her oversight role over state-owned companies. The Democratic Alliance and the Economic Freedom Fighters have meanwhile taken the Molefe reappointment issue to court, which will be heard next month. Brown has acknowledged that there are problems at the power utility. She says she will soon make an announcement on a special investigation unit to probe governance issues at Eskom. DA leader Mmusi Maimane will hold a press conference in Pretoria today following his deportation from Zambia. Maimane arrived back in Johannesburg last night after he was kicked out of Lusaka. He had travelled to the capital Lusaka to attend the treason trial of the opposition leader Hakainde Hichilema.
I'm still waiting for those reasons. When I asked the officials and the policemen and other members and immigration officials who walked onto the plane, about 20 people, I then had to answer the question. I asked them the question, why exactly are you asking me to not gain entry into Zambia? They said, we're not obligated to give you a single reason. We are simply telling you you cannot leave this plane and you can't leave. The manner in which the Zambian authority treated me was in the most undignifying way I've ever been treated. Firstly, they detained my phone. They took my phone away. They asked me if I had other instruments of communications. They confiscated my iPad. Then they started to assault me, insisting that I delete any pictures I'd had on my phone. And then ultimately, the pilot of the plane needed to come and rescue us from the situation while they were trying to insist that they search us illegally. They refused for us to get legal contact. They started to assault my colleagues who were trying to call our lawyers. And then they were delaying the flight returning because they kept detaining us on there when new passengers were meaning to go back to Johannesburg.
Well, that's Mmusi Maimane there. That's why we're asking you this question on your screen right now. What do you make of all of this? He was deported yesterday on Africa Day of all days out of Zambia. We'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. Now, back home, police have foiled an alleged human trafficking syndicate here in Springs on the Gauteng's East Rand. 11 women were rescued from the brothel. A Nigerian national, as well as a local TV drama actor, were arrested, along with 13 others. The suspects will appear in court today.
It's disguised as a lodge in the Springs CBD, but step inside, you'll find a brothel.
We are still checking and finding out who is the owner of the brothel. Among the suspects who were arrested, one is a Nigerian and one is a white lady.
11 women aged between 19 and 41 were also taken in. They are believed to be the victims.
Some they're coming from Devon, Kimberley, Bushbuck Ridge, Rodiport, from different places also around Gauteng. So that is indicating that people are recruited to come and do this evil thing and drugs. And then they are indicating that there is someone who's collecting money. They are working for someone.
The incident comes just a week after a similar arrest in Springs. Last Friday, police pounced in at a house just meters away. They rescued 5 girls aged between 14 and 19. A 42-year-old Nigerian national and a 17-year-old woman were arrested for the crime.
There are other places which we are still following up, and we still believe that those people who are doing this within a short period of time, they will be behind bars.
The suspects have been charged with transgression of the Sexual Offences Act. Mangoba Mchulu, SABC News at Springs on Gauteng's East Rand.
And that's your news for now. Now, the focus for today is on the role of the church in a democratic South Africa in relation to politics. Let's start that conversation with Eben.
Yeah, it's a conversation that's warming up or heating up here in South Africa. Our group of pastors, together with Mzwanele Manyi's Decolonization Foundation, they have slammed the South African Council of Churches for its state capture report, which of course was released last week here in South Africa. They've accused the South African Council of Churches of behaving in an ungodly fashion, they say.
Vuga Ministries fraternal pastors gathered at the site of the Sharpeville massacre 57 years ago. They say the South African Council of Churches has behaved in an ungodly manner by passing judgment on President Zuma and the Guptas. They went further to accuse SACC leaders of being corrupt.
This structure used to enjoy the overwhelming support of our people during the struggle. Currently, deviated from what they used to be. With the democratization, they are a cartel of self-serving individuals hiding behind collars, collars, the collar, hiding behind the collars and long ropes, covering the corrupt activities.
They want the Council of Churches investigated for corruption.
We are going to push for the financial scrutiny, in audit on your financial backgrounds from 1980 with the South African Council of Churches, so that the people must know the truth of where and what type of people of this cartel and this agents of apartheid is all about.
Jimmy Manyi thanked the pastors for their statement.
We are very grateful that we still have ministers like yourselves that are opening our eyes, that when some of our people, when they wear collars, don't take them for granted that they are necessarily men of God. That you can have people that wear collars but are at the center of dividing the nation.
The South African Council of Churches was unavailable for comment.
Thank you very much.
Bongeni Mutua, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Well, we have representation from the South African Council of Churches here in studio. It's in the shape of Bishop Zippo Daniel Siwa, who's with us. A very good morning to you, Bishop. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers.
I saw you have a little bit of a giggle at the screen while they were talking about your revolutionary movement in such tones. What is your reaction to what you've just witnessed?
Let me start by saying they're entitled to their opinion, as everyone is. But it is said that they should use the name of the church. They should go back and understand, first of all, that South Africa and Africa as a whole is a very religious community to start with. And secondly, people cannot be divided into boxes to say, today I am religious, tomorrow I am cultural, the other day I'm business, the other day I'm political. A person is a person in the whole, and there is nowhere in history and in the scriptures, in all the religious documents, where there was a separation between who people are. And it is said that they even go back and say the council should be investigated. They are welcome to do that.
Yeah, they talk about corruption and being agents.
It is very interesting because they say as far back as 1980, I don't know whether they want to defend apartheid and says the South African Council of Churches should not have fought against apartheid.
You touch on something that's very important that I think people don't always realize. 85% of South Africans identify themselves as Christian, and a large percentage of those 85% are what you would call reborn Christians, for that matter. Tell me about, in that sort of context, how do you, as this Council of Churches here in South Africa, how do you view your role in a democratic society?
The very constitution, the present constitution, which is an acclaimed document, its preamble ends with the words, God protect South Africa. And so who then, if not the church and the whole religious community, were going to enact on that prayer of the preamble of the South African Constitution? We are obliged. It's not a nice thing to do. We are obliged to pastor, to look after the people and the creation of God. The role of the church is both pastoral and prophetic.
Tell me then about the journey that brought you to the state capture report, and what do you hope to achieve with this report?
It's part of a bigger program of the South African Council of Churches, which was adopted and launched at Regina Mundi in December 2015, where we asked ourselves, what is the South Africa that we need to pray for? So we needed to understand that. So we launched a research program to say, let's understand what the South Africa we want to pray for should look like. And part of that program is a pillar called Anchoring Democracy. And in that, we were seeking to assist both the government and the citizens and business to say, how do we help people to act in ways that enhance our democracy, which is a lovely thing. But whilst we're on that program, there came the revelations by former minister and Madam Feinchi Mentor, who made startling allegations of being approached. And then the African National Congress said that the people should go and report to the General Secretary of the ANC. And then we felt then at that time, because there were people who were scared to go even there, you will recall that almost at about the same time, one of the ministers said, it's not going to be easy because we all have smallanyana skeletons. And then the South African Council of Churches then set up the unburdening panel. The purpose at that time was just for people to come and tell their stories and in a sense relieve themselves of the pain of being carrying those skeletons. And it was pastoral. But the more we went into this thing, we discovered that it is bigger. It will need us to apply the methodology of See, Judge, Act. And so we involved a lot of research in order for us to understand what is meant by this state capture thing. So that's where the report comes from. We invited people to come and share. We also interacted with researchers from the different institutes.
Did you do enough to involve other Christian organizations in this process, or do you believe there's this battle for unity within Christianity in South Africa itself, as you only represent just over 40% of churches in South Africa? Should that not have been maybe a wider program on your part?
The South African Council of Churches is very open. It has 26 member denominations, not individual churches. But also it includes the Evangelical Alliance, which is a group of all the evangelical churches. It also includes the African Initiated Churches, and it is still open for membership. And so anybody is, this is a process which is open to everybody, and people who feel that they are not represented, they are free to add their
as you see,
as they do.
Bishop, in conclusion, just tell us about the way forward, both for you, But what would you like to see happen next in South Africa then?
As we said, you know, the report revealed that South Africa is in a bad state at the moment. It is not only corruption, it is systematic, organized chaos, which renders even the government, even the governing party, powerless because decision seems to be taken elsewhere. And there is so much goodness that we can turn the tide around. And we're praying that the people engage the reports, talk about it, but most importantly, take actions that will send us into a good trajectory.
Part of that is using the right wording and the right language at the right time.
Yes.
Do you think using the word mafia state at this time, in this year, with what's ahead for all of us, is the right time and the right place?
It is. All we're doing is to putting in the public, which is there. It's public knowledge in the public domain. We're just lifting up the mirror to say, see what are the challenges, and we believe that South Africans can correct.
Bishop, I thank you very much for coming in today to talk about a very emotive issue that's affecting all of us South Africans. Yes, South Africa is a mostly Christian country. Actually, 85% of South Africans identify themselves as Christian. And South Africa, I can tell you, is one of the most religious countries on the planet today. No doubt about that. We were talking this morning to, well, the president of the South African Council of Churches, Bishop Zippo Daniel Siwa, and I thank you once again for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, of course, the question we've been asking you is the one that you've seen on screen, and you guys are voting on the poll, and you're tweeting us and you're telling us, no, churches shouldn't get involved in politics, is the question. 60% of you say that. 40% say yes. Can one divorce the two? I think it is very difficult when you talk about morals, ethics, and leadership to divorce the one from the other. But what are you guys tweeting us? This one from Bonakele, who says, the church is the voice of the poor and the marginalized. If the church can be quiet, it will sell the soul of the defense of the masses, says Bonakele. Then Unati says, churches must just preach the word of God, not politics, says Unati. He's very explicit about this. Kononatso says, churches have always been part of us and our struggle, and they have the following too. We cannot pick and choose when it suits us, says Kononatso. Yes, that is true. Siafana, good morning to you. God is not involved in politics, so there is no need the churches to be involved on that thing, he says. And this one from Offense, who says, we've seen what happens when religion mixes with politics in the Middle East. Yep, that's a bit of a warning there, isn't it? Anyhow, keep tweeting us, guys. It's wonderful to get your views. You know, this is the Newsroom show. This is your show. It's your voice. Let's have a look what's on social media right now. Of course, the story. The man has been in the crosshairs in Zambia. Yes, Musimamane was barred from entering the country there yesterday. He went to attend the high treason court case of Hakainda Hichilema. It is still unclear as to why he was not allowed into the country. Birdie has told me. They mentioned the word visa problems. I don't know about visa problems in Zambia. Can you even have visa problems in Zambia if you're South Africa? Then, of course, in Springs, hashtag Springs, people are talking about the brothel bust where 11 girls were rescued. It's actually 11 women. But people seem to be more curious as to who the TV soap star is that has been linked to this scandal. That's the show, apparently, that the person's involved in. Scandal it is. We'll bring you the name. Don't worry about that. Now, today is also Bipolar Awareness Day. Around 4 million South Africans have mental illness. Akeso Clinic is hosting a free talk about bipolar disease tomorrow in Randburg here in Johannesburg, but they do have clinics around the country. Please research this mental illness. Get yourself, a family member, or a friend checked if they do have any of the characteristics. And we know mood swings and the like, that's what it's about. At City of Joburg posted this list of what friends and family can do to help. So take a look at this list. If you see any of your family members with the symptoms, try and get them some help. Then, in an update on one of the biggest stories of the week, hashtag Manchester. Around 10 people have now been arrested. Of course, 8 are still in custody while 2 were released. Parents are still reeling from their loss and speaking out on public platforms. People are also getting a B tattoo. Manchester's iconic symbol, also a symbol of strength and defiance. This is to raise money for the victim families. Of course, Manchester United, the greatest club in the world, donated £1 million to the victims yesterday. Yep. Yesterday, we also told you about the double suicide bombing at a bus station in Indonesia's capital, Jakarta. That's the hashtag. ISIS has claimed responsibility for that attack as well. Then, of course, the holy month of Ramadan begins today, and it continues for 30 days until the 24th of June. This is considered the holiest month in the Islamic calendar, and Muslims are expected to abstain from food, drink, and certain other borderline activities, we can call it, during daylight hours. So, Ramadan Mubarak to all of our Muslim viewers here in South Africa and around the continent. We hope that when it is Taraweeh tonight, you will start what will be a very peaceful month of Ramadan. Now for our picture of the day. This one comes from Javi Derek, and he says, crafted and mapped by nature, hashtag Africa Day. Can you see the continent there crafted out in this picture? Apparently this picture is taken in the northern parts of South Africa. Beautiful, the African continent in the landscape. We love it, love that kind of thing. Anyhow, our comment of the day comes from Mhlonishwa Msibisi, who says, so Stuart Baxter, Ubize, the same team every corner before except for Mubara. Nevertheless, we're behind the team. Nevertheless, you have to be behind the team because a coach's duty is not to pick new players. A coach's duty is to make old players better. Then you're doing your job as a coach. Anyhow, we move on to the court. Cases might be of interest to you. We'll start in the east of Johannesburg, where 17 people, including a local TV actor and a Nigerian national, are expected to appear in a Springs court following their arrest in connection to a human trafficking syndicate operating in Springs. Yes, 11 women were rescued from a brothel there. Still in Johannesburg, the sentencing of a 51-year-old Randfontein man who was convicted of raping 2 of his stepdaughters is expected to take place in the Johannesburg High Court. He is not to be named in order to protect the identities of the 2 young girls. That's where we are right now. We'll be back after the break. We're talking about heavy subject matter today, the church and politics. Tweet us what you think about this after a short break.
Are you about that trending life? The looking good and all that slayage? Well, fear not, because Trends has all the fashion do's and don'ts for you to stay on point this upcoming season.
This film will be an immersive spectacle. You got Kong that's 100 feet tall.
It tells this incredible story of man versus nature.
The iconic stage production by Mbongeni Ngema is back with a bang.
Sarafina is a classic South African production.
I always choose to align myself with brands that I just love. Because when you love something, it doesn't become work.
Luxury is not built overnight, but it's an experience that comes with time.
Catch up with all the trends on Trends Saturdays at 12.
The latest results of the Global Values Survey shows that religious organizations remain amongst the most trusted institutions here in South African society. They enjoy even higher levels of public trust in either the state or even the private sector. However, South Africa's particular circumstances are complicated by what can only be described as a difficult historical relationship between the church and the state. Now, to talk about this, more on the relations between churches and the state, we are joined via Skype by Dr. Dion Foster. He's the director of the Beyers Naudé Center for Public Theology. Dr. Foster, very good morning to you.
Morning, Evan. It's lovely to be on air with you.
Doc, just set the scene for us quickly. Tell me quickly, South Africa, are we a more religious country than would be the global standard?
Evan, absolutely we are. The most recent household survey of 2013 showed that about 85% of South Africans self-identified as Christian. And then on top of that, we still have our Islamic, Hindu, Buddhist sisters and brothers. So that brings the average up very high. That's an increase from the last national survey of 2001, where the average was 79%. So we are, in South Africa, an extremely religious population.
Talk to me about the role of the church in a democratic society and what the expectation is of the church, I would think, within that democracy.
Well, even if you think about it, where you have such a massively high percentage of persons who self-identify as persons of faith, it means that those persons are actually active in society. I mean, they occupy positions in government. I don't know if you know this, the three most powerful persons in our country, Jacob Zuma, Mogoeng, the Chief Justice, and the leader of the opposition, Mmusi Maimane, are all ordained members. I don't know if our viewers know this, ordained members of Christian churches. This is a very interesting phenomenon. But of course, we do have Christians in all sectors of society, in government, in the private sector, in business, in education, in medicine. And certainly the values of their faith should influence the way in which our country operates. The ordinary citizens, of course, also have a role to play. And we see particularly through denominations that we should expect that church bodies like the South African Council of Churches, bishops' meetings, moderators' meetings, should affect the policy of the nation for the common good of all of its citizens.
When is it okay for the church to step into the breach of politics and comment in politics and try and influence politics?
Well, I think it's always acceptable for the church to engage in the work of working for the good of society and holding those who have power accountable. I think it's irresponsible for us to separate faith and public life. You know, I would rather know what people believe and why they believe it and see their convictions borne publicly than have those things influence policy or decision-making behind the scenes. Even the other thing that I think it's important for us to realize is that all faith is political. I mean, if you believe things and you live according to those beliefs, they're going to have consequences for your economic, your political, and your social living. So I think in that sense, it's always appropriate for persons of faith to work for the good of their societies.
That then brings us to the point, I suppose, of discerning when to and when not to step into the breach and make these kinds of public statements, as it were. When do you think is a discernible time to comment on what happens in public and political life?
Even I think the one thing that's important is that we need to recognize that religious bodies should remain politically neutral when it comes to political issues. And I think that's the mistake that we see currently. So the denomination of which I'm a member, I'm a minister of the Methodist Church of Southern Africa, even though I'm at the university. This denomination currently is in danger of having the same relationship to the governing party, the ANC, as what the Dutch Reformed Church had to the Nationalist Party. I saw recently a report that 65% of parliamentarians in the last census indicated they belong to this denomination. And we have to be careful that we don't allow political party issues to affect our constituencies. It is an exceptionally dangerous thing when people who trust their religious institutions are influenced in terms of party politics, and we shouldn't see that happening. So the churches should be active, and Christians should be active in working for justice and the common good in society. But for me, it's an extremely dangerous thing when we see political parties or individuals from particular religious groupings using that influence to capture constituency. I think in some sense that becomes church capture.
What do you then make of the State of Capture report that was put forward by the South African Council of Churches a little bit earlier in the week?
I happen to think, Eben, that the South African Council of Churches is fulfilling their role responsibly. They represent a very, very significant sector of our population, as we said earlier. Probably somewhere between 48 and 85% of South African citizens belong to churches that are part of the South African Council of Churches. And they have a responsibility to hold the state accountable for their elected service. And this is a very important thing. The leaders who occupy positions of leadership in our nation need to be reminded that they are elected to do so for the sake of service. They're there to serve the nation. And when they are not doing so, the church has a responsibility to remind them that they should hold to a higher standard of justice and ethics, that they shouldn't be corrupted by wealth or personal greed, and that where we see that happening in the state, that they need to repent, they need to turn from that and live in a better way.
Dr. Foster, fantastic to get your views today on the Newsroom show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Eben.
That's Dr. Dion Foster. He is the director of the Beyers Naudé Centre for Public Theology here in South Africa.
And that's exactly the reason why we are asking you on our poll today whether or not churches should get involved in politics. Let's take a look at what you are saying on the poll and what the numbers suggest. Now, so far, we have 137 votes in. 59%, that's close to 60%, are saying no, the church should not get involved in politics. 41% are saying yes. Let's also take a look at what you have to say.
Interesting, Elvis. They say, stay in your lane, Pastor. Stay in your lane. But we just heard from the experts that you can't divorce the two, can you?
You can't divorce the two. They're very closely linked, and the church has always been involved, they say. So let's take a look at what you are saying. Sam says, we have chapter 9. We're supposed to deal with the broader capture stories that we are seeing currently from the church and other reports that's emanating.
Muli Malong says, politicians run to church to get prayers after stealing from the poor. And I've warned the church against this, says Muli Malong.
Jarvis Jin says, the SACC have a track record of fighting for freedom. They should continue to be the voice of reason in this amoral country, says Jarvis.
Rosario Brown tweets us that the church was good enough to fight apartheid but not corruption. Oh yes, churches get involved, says Rosario Brown.
Well, if it's hell, it's going to be hot there, Rosario. Two Speed says bishops, pastors should not involve themselves and the church in politics. Satan is the referee there, says Two Speed.
Hey, say that ref doesn't even have a whistle, man. Satan is the referee. Isn't that interesting? That's a different take on it. Keep on tweeting us, guys. You know, it's great to hear from you. But let's carry on with the show. After the break, Elvis, interesting. We'll talk to Sador Fikeni. I'd love to hear what he has to say about this whole thing.
Yes, a very interesting discussion. So stay tuned. But now let's take a look at the front pages of the newspapers from around the globe. And we start off in New York, where the New York Times report that the Saudi Arabia's largest sovereign wealth fund will make a $20 billion investment in a new Blackstone Group infrastructure project, which could then double in size and produce steady returns. Moving to Florida, the Miami Herald says that President Donald Trump's revised travel ban speaks with vague words of national security, but in context drips with religious intolerance, animus and discrimination, as well as a federal appeal court that said yesterday in ruling against the executive order targeting 6 Muslim-majority countries. So that's what's happening in the U.S. And finally, in Australia, the Australian reports that senior Trump administration officials have told the Foreign Minister, Julie Bishop, privately that they fear an inevitable nuclear arms race in the Asia-Pacific. An increasingly belligerent North Korea is not reined in as it escalates its intermediate-range missile program. Now, those are all your newspapers from around the globe. You have to stay tuned. We'll take a look at some more later, but right now, let's take a break. After the break, we come back with you, with Professor Fikeni in our Pretoria studios.
A conscious move from being a street kid to being a barrister of note.
Keep on praying for me to make a better life.
A creative application of the mind on an essential need, water in wheelbarrow containers.
How about if we were to come up with an idea of an enclosed container that sits on top of the frame of a wheelbarrow?
With the sharing of resources, a boy with Russell Silver syndrome receives medication.
The fact that you just said to me, well, you're covered for next month, that's amazing.
So that's the medication.
For more inspiring stories, stay tuned to Bupilong every Friday.
The African National Congress has been urged to examine itself and mend its ways before reaching a point of no return. Now, this was the stern warning from the South African Council of Churches, which made public its recently released unburdening panel process report. The SACC explained that the process was a pastoral one and detailed how it worked. Matters would be reported to the General Secretary's office, which in turn passed them on to a panel of lawyers. The revealed information rather than either can be used by the churches for advocacy or be made public. Now, this report has raised questions about the influence of the church in party politics. Professor Sador now joins us from our Pretoria studios. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning to you and good morning to your viewers.
First and foremostly, Professor, what is the role of a church in politics, in relation to politics, and should there be a role for the church to play?
The church's role in society is to make sure that morality, ethics, as well as the issue of social justice are taken care of. They may not be involved in politics, but once politics fail to fulfill that mandate for one reason or another, then the churches are bound not to fold their arms in face of injustice, as was the case in the struggle against slavery, the struggle against colonialism, as well as the struggle against apartheid.
Now, what influence do you think the churches have in party politics as it stands right now today?
It adds a voice of moral authority in the pressure of the political party to reflect on itself, and that adding to many other voices of the opposition, the NGO, the ANC veterans, who are actually raising the same issues, but the churches tend to add into that particular voice. But of course, we should be reminded that the independent African church is a lot more fragmented, and they may not be part of the mainstream South African Council of Churches. Therefore, they may take different positions depending on a church or a denomination.
There are those that would argue that the church should stay in their role and focus on social justice, as you indicated earlier. But some others would argue that the church did play a role, especially during the apartheid era. Democratic South Africa, is that argument still valid?
It is still valid because what should be consistent here is social justice or injustice thereof. If there is corruption, and if that corruption impacts on the service delivery on people, then the church has to raise its voice. If there is any oppression, then the church should raise its voice, and that in itself should not necessarily be seen as entering into the space of politics, but rather keeping the church on its role of social justice promotion and ethics and morality.
Now, the South African Council of Churches has released its report in relation to state capture. How serious do you think the ruling party, the African National Congress, should take that report?
I think they should take it seriously because for the first time, the observation that the state might be sliding on a slippery slope towards being a mafia state. That coinage is the first time we've been using the notion of a state capture, but now a mafia state would mean a parallel state or a deep state being created as an organized crime to undermine a formal state. And that has to be very serious in a sense. But it all depends on how different factions of the ruling party will perceive this, because others may be open to embrace it and use it politically on a year like this, but others may just reject it out of hand.
A group of pastors, together with Mzwanele Manyi, the Decolonization Foundation, have slammed the SACC for that report. What do you think of that particular group and their role?
As I indicated, the church itself is fragmented, but the mainstream formal churches tend to be within the SACC historically, but you do have new charismatic churches and some independent African churches who either have never been involved in politics or who may actually, depending on the pastor, support the existing government and the leadership. And being linked up with Mr. Manyi would not be surprising, because he has taken a position to challenge and defend anything that points towards the state capture that is focusing on the Gupta family or the leadership. So to that extent, I do think that he might actually be rallying them to say the radical economic transformation is a bigger picture they should be focusing on, rather than some of the anecdotal reports of corruption within government.
We had the state capture report by the public protector. We had the report by the church, the unburdening panel. We had another report just yesterday from intellectuals. What does this say about the state of party politics within the African National Congress as we speak, Professor?
All what it indicates is that the party is so factionalized that it can no longer process some of these reports in any logical, intelligent way. Each side has made up its mind. Whatever is being said, those who were meant to reject it will reject it no matter what evidence is presented. And they may even reject the notion of having an investigation. And those who believe that there is something wrong that ought to be attended to will use every opportunity to do that. Remember the context and the backdrop. It is an election year for ANC leadership this year, both at provinces and nationally. It is also an election year for the SACP, which is holding its Congress soon. So any report that comes in is often processed either as a political tool or to add to the arguments that others have been raising.
Could the church provide guidance here to the African National Congress and perhaps provide divine intervention for the party moving forward?
I doubt the church alone would have that power. Remember that post-1990, the church had played a diminished role for some time. And the church recently had been trying to reorganize itself, so it doesn't have the same clout and the same power that it used to have in the 80s, in the 70s, in the 60s, in the 50s. And as such, the church, through the SACC, is trying to remobilize itself. It may add to many other voices that we've seen from the NGO opposition and those who are within the ANC Alliance partnership. But the church alone would not deliver that knockout blow.
Hallelujah. Thank you so much, Professor, and thank you for your time.
My pleasure.
That was Professor Sador Fikeni. He's joining us from our Pretoria studios, talking to us about the recent reports by the SACC. What do you make of all of that? Asking you that question, of course, on our poll today. Should churches get involved in politics? I'd like to get your thoughts on it on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom, as well as on the Facebook page. Let's take a look.
Yeah, Elvis, people are tweeting us feverishly, you know.
But there's the poll, Eben. Look at that. 146 votes
I'm
in.
intrigued by this. We as Christians don't want the church involved as much as we think in politics. Maybe it's more church leaders who feel an obligation to get involved in politics. Interesting, isn't it?
Well, there you go. 59% saying no, 41% are saying yes. But as you indicated, people are tweeting us. Let us see what you have to say.
Christian Kleinant says, keep religion out of our face and lives, please. Protect us from evil politicians, abuse and insult us this way. State capture.
This one from Gotlejo says, no, they should focus on the word of God. Politics are lies, mind games, greed, corruption, scandals. They should pray for stability instead.
Zippo says to us, yes, they must get involved to expose and ban some laws from politics. It's time for the Bible to take its place. Enough about lies.
Bible bashing. There, Ephraim Luke says, our liberation was led by the churches.
And Alan Busak, some will say that, Ephraim. Moving to Kolan in Kosi, he says, yes, the church should be a prophetic voice and speak to systems and powers. Interesting take there. Interesting take there. Very. Keep tweeting us. Great to hear from you guys. But Elvis, the man who's in the news today is Mmusi Maimane. Some people are saying, stay in your lane. What are you doing in Zambia and so forth? Of course, he's got a press conference in a short while. I think in about half an hour.
In about half an hour, he'll address us and let us know as to why he was evicted from Zambia and what's his take on that. Of course, he was
My question is more, why was he in Zambia? Apparently, he's attending a treason trial of
Hichilema, who obviously blockaded the presidential motorcade and was thrown in jail. Sir.
But should the leader of the opposition in South Africa be involved or get involved in the politics of our neighbours? I'm not sure if there's... I'm not sure if...
There's a convocation of political leaders in the SADC region, and they get together, and that could be maybe part and parcel of the reason and support for the Zambian opposition leader.
Interesting. You guys are tweeting us a lot. Let's have a look quickly at what you're saying. This one comes from Tangai, who says, on what grounds did they deport him? Well, we'll find out shortly.
This one from Anela says, what was he doing there? He's an opposition leader here, not there.
Fair. That is a sentiment that's expressed a lot, actually. Michael HD tells us it's clear that Zambia is not interested in opposition parties from other countries. Typical of African countries being hostile to the opposition, he says.
Ikona Nazo says, it is sad that our sister country could do such. Mmusi is not just the DA politician, he is a South African parliamentary member, and this is a violation.
And Lachasa says, South African government should treat Zambian government the way it was treated Mmusi Maimane. Lachasa, governments don't treat each other like that. Anyhow, Elvis, so a cracking sporting weekend ahead of us, and well, there are going to be a couple of highlights on the calendar. This weekend. I look forward to a bit of motor racing myself. I've got Kenda Mahamate. Yeah, if I can I walk out a shot? Can I walk out a shot? There we go. Kendall.
No, very
Please,
good.
guys, work with us, man. There we go.
Here we go.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Colin. Thank you for joining us today. Nice of you to be with us. There we go. Massive weekend, as I said, for Formula One fans. And Kendall is here to talk about the circus being probably in its spiritual home, Monaco.
Absolutely. It's one of it is the iconic race, isn't it? That street race out in Monaco, the playground of the rich and famous. And I tell you what, it's looking like Sebastian Vettel might be using this to run away with the driver standings. He's right at the top, 104 points, and he broke the course record in free practice too.
Yeah, he looks fast there. But you know, Monaco is the one place where you can't really overtake. There's always a little bit of a weather factor because it's right at the coast. And quite often it's the one place where the fastest guy never really wins. It depends on, of course, how you get off the line, how you get off the line on Sunday. And I get a feeling that the Mercedes might be fast off the line this year.
Well, considering that Lewis Hamilton had actually broken the course record in the first practice session, second practice session, he had massive issues, finishing 6th or 8th. And so it seems as if Ferrari and Vettel have got a bit of a jump on a Mercedes.
This guy, my money's on this guy. If he can get close, if he can start in 3rd place on the grid, if he can get in the top front 2 grids, I think Max has enough nous, and you know, he is the next big thing, I think, in motorsport. If he can get off the line, I think he might surprise a few people.
He said something very important, that this is a very difficult course to overtake on. But you know what, if anybody's going to overtake on this course,
it'll be Max.
It's Max Verstappen.
Yeah, it'll be Max, no doubt. No doubt. But, you know, this is the big show, of course, this weekend. But I think the one that the whole world of motorsport will be looking at will be happening in the US. It's the Indy 500. I think the broadcast starts at 6:30 on Sunday night, right after the Monaco Grand Prix. Fernando Alonso looking to rewrite the record books and sort of put his name in the history books.
Exactly. And you know what? And that's, I think right now we're seeing him in his practice car doing his laps. You know what? He's actually astounded all and sundry. Even the likes of Joseph Newgarden, for example, talking about how phenomenal it has been to have Alonso on this circuit this year.
I don't think he's appreciated by the world of motorsport simply because he hasn't had the teams, the car the last 5 or 6 years. But he is trying to prove a point. He's trying to show to the world that he's the best racing driver alive today. And if he wins at Indy, there's no doubt that he will have that mantle as the best racer in the world today.
No, definitely. I think he'd definitely be seen as one of the legends where he to do so. I can tell you he's already electrified this year's race, qualifying 4th ahead of so many other much better and much more accomplished Indy 500 drivers.
Absolutely.
He's adapted so well that even all the old Indy 500 drivers have stood up to look and see, look, Alonso's come from Formula 1 and he's actually adapted to the techniques as well as the tactics of Indy 500.
So that's what we've got to look forward to. I certainly am looking forward to that one. I'm going to watch Indy for the first time simply because it's going to be such a great show. We'll be back at the top of the hour at 10 o'clock. We'll bring you a little bit more. Hopefully we'll be live either at Parliament or at 10:30 we'll go live to where Musi Mamani will be talking about being kicked out of Zambia. Don't miss it.
To be African is beautiful. To be African is a privilege.
It represents hard work. It represents being able to stand on your own.
And respecting other cultures as well.
It's about promoting African heritage.
We are all Africans. Let's come together so that we can have a formidable force.
Our cultures interlink with one another.
And by standing together and embracing one another, you know, there's power in unity.
It is time to cut off this issue of xenophobia.
I stand for African unity. I stand for promoting unity in Africa because
there are many opportunities
to be whatever you want to be.
Africa is one of the most important continents.
Because if we can come together as one, we will be able to actually build a better Africa, the new Africa for the future. And if we unite our hearts and our minds together and we go forward, we will conquer.
So let us all arise and be proudly African.
Being an African is who I am right now.
I'm proudly African. I love Africa.
Wishing you all a very happy Africa Month.
One love.
Yeah, welcome back. Very good morning once again. 10 o'clock Central African time. Kendall is with me, and we're going to be here until what?
Till midday.
Till midday, but me and you together for the next hour.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to be looking forward to all of the news that's happening. Quite a lot happening with Mmusi Maimane being sent back from Zambia.
We've been talking about church and politics the first hour. What do you make of, firstly, the question, and secondly, the kind of tweets we've been getting? Because people are very passionate, it seems, about church, politics, religion. I think
I'm shocked at the split. I really didn't expect a 60-40 split in favor of the church pulling out of politics.
Let's have a look at that poll. Maybe it's updated a little bit. Can we have a look, guys? There we go. 156 votes in here, and it stays fairly similar, Kendall.
Yeah, 100%. I really would have thought that it would have been exactly the opposite, considering, like you said earlier, 85% of South Africans profess to be Christians, and I thought they wanted the church to be more involved in state politics.
Interesting numbers. I must say, it surprises me as well. I thought that, you know, the Christians amongst us would want the church to have a say on morals and ethics and how the country's run and so forth, as has been pointed out by the Council of Churches. That's what they want. But you guys are tweeting us. What are you saying?
There was the one interesting tweet that we saw earlier on where somebody mentioned all of those examples of like how the Hindu government is actually run by the Hindu state party. Yeah, runs India. Pradley Koikoi says we need to remember that most established churches emanating from Europe fully supported and unduly benefited from colonialism evil.
Hard but true. Andrew Mauchana says, the Newsroom, if the churches aren't allowed in politics, then politics and their politicians and their politics should come coming to church asking for prayers. Interesting.
That they do. Get blessed by the priest. And Bekin Yandeni says all political organizations campaign in churches. If church can boycott election, it won't be election at all.
Lakasa tweets us, he says, no, churches should not be involved in politics, but some church leaders defend some politicians. Yep.
Let's work say churches of today have got moral authority. Can't be trusted, have got no moral authority, Let's Work SA says. That they can't be trusted to question anything as mostly are commercialized.
Yeah, another interesting view. That churches have no moral authority. That's a tough view from Mohale Maeko. Let's Work South Africa is what he says. Of course, we're also asking a news question of the day, and that's Mmusi Maimane being kicked out of Zambia. How do you view that?
Very interesting, and I think there's a lot of bigger geopolitical issue to look at as well. About it is my brother's keeper, and that's one of the reasons I think Mmusi would have gone to Zambia to get involved in the trial hearing of. I
think the issue that Zambia has more is not the individual; it's more a problem with the office, the leader of the opposition. You shouldn't have any. You shouldn't come and politic in our country, which I suppose is something that needs to be discussed also.
No, 100%. And it remains to be seen what he's going to say at 10:30.
Yeah, I look forward to that one. Anyhow, let's go now to Minister Ayanda Dlodlo. That's our new communications minister. She's about to present her first budget vote for the communications department. The SABC, I'm sure, will feature quite massively in this debate. Let's go there live.
Overdo it, we've got some rules that apply to that. Yours is just to watch them, make your own determination, but don't enter the fray. I hope we will support one another on that one. For members, the debate will be robust, I suppose, but respectful. And I trust you will honor that. So we're all ready for the debate. Secretary, can you read the order?
Debate on vote number 3, Communications Appropriation Bill.
Honorable the Minister, Honorable Dlodlo. The minister, has been our deputy minister, but she's a brand new minister of communication, so this is a maiden speech. And you know what we do. Over to you, Minister.
Thank you very much, House Chair. Good morning to everybody. The ministers who have come here to support, portfolio committee members, House Chair, Deputy Minister, my babies in the gallery, the chairs and acting chairs and acting whoever in this portfolio. all the actors and the non-actors in our portfolio. But believe me, the Deputy Minister and I are looking into the issue of filling in positions. I stand here today in front of this august house as a woman, a mother, a sister. The mere fact of my gender communicates messages to some that I may be raped, maimed, or killed. Notwithstanding many of the laws enacted, such as the Domestic Violence Act and the Criminal Law Amendment Act of 2007, and the Protection from Harassment Act of 2011, many women in our country remain vulnerable and targeted. Many have died at the hands of people who professed to love them. Many of our women continue to be harassed, and some of our laws, in many instances, still treat perpetrators of these crimes leniently. Wasan Shire, a Kenyan-born Somali poet, when asked about how it feels to be a woman subjected to these forms of abuse, she wrote in a poem, and I read, "Later that night, I held an atlas on my lap, ran my fingers across the world and whispered, 'Where does it hurt?' It answered, 'Everywhere, everywhere, and everywhere.'" We meet at a time when the social fabric of our society is severely tested. The recent spate of brutal attacks and murders of women and children has sent shockwaves throughout our society. However, we need to do more than just be outraged. The hurt and pain that we all rightly feel should be channeled into action that will protect the most vulnerable amongst us and instill a sense of heightened vigilance amongst women and civil society at large. We need to say enough is enough and act so that no woman or child ever again falls victim to abuse, rape, or murder. We must talk about why our men and boys are so violent. Where does it hurt with them? And what can we do together to deal with that? It is in our hands to become the change we want to be the country that not only theorizes about our commitment to non-sexism. I am heartened that a united civil front is emerging to deal with the many complex issues that drive child and women abuse. Many have said, not in our name, and we need to sustain that commitment and momentum. I can assure you, for its part, government will continue to lead the way, but ultimately we need society to stand together to fight this scourge. My department and its various entities will be at the forefront of this campaign by Brand South Africa to rally South Africans to protect our nation's women and children. Honorable Chairperson, fundamentals of a debate are interlinked to the political economy, the bread and butter issues, the essence and nerve center of service delivery. It impacts directly and indirectly to the quality of life of our society, our citizens, and ultimately ordinary men and women and children. With this powerful instrument called the budget, we seek to allocate the most valuable and scarce resource of a country to the ever-changing demands and needs of our people. The DOC plays a pivotal part in that sector that has asserted itself in the modern day as a game changer that is fundamentally transforming human life. There can't be a dispute that information and communication technology has become a lifeline service that changes people's lives. This is succinctly articulated by German engineer and economist Klaus Schwab when he said, "This time is different." He asserts that, simply put, major technological innovations are at the brink of fueling momentous change throughout the world, inevitably so. We're at the beginning of a revolution that is fundamentally changing the way we live, the way we work and relate to one another. In its scale, scope, and complexity, what I consider to be the fourth industrial revolution is like anything humankind can experience before, has never experienced before. South Africa as a country has a choice either to be a significant player in the global technological development or be the recipient and consumer who tails behind innovation. It might be too late to position ourselves as leaders. However, there is scope to be a meaningful player. Not to assert ourselves in the innovation and development engine room will render us vulnerable to global economic and technology advances. Yesterday, we celebrated Africa Day under the theme, the Year of O.R. Tambo, Building a Better Africa and a Better World. Amongst many of O.R.'s achievements, we salute him as a freedom fighter, global fighter against sexism and racism, a science teacher, choral music lover, a communicator, a global colossus, as Madiba described him, who strode the globe so that we can be free, promoting unity, deepening ties of solidarity between us and the world. Honorable Chairperson, our continent is filled with promise, and in our relatively young and determined population, we have abundant human capital to drive Africa's future. I would like to acknowledge the presence of some of those determined young people who join us today in the gallery. They are Shirelle Daniels, they're all sitting over there. Darren Morris, Renee Sishonga, Leila Deva, Joshua Mabasa, and Babalo Mabaso, who I had. I hope my time will not be affected. I had the pleasure of meeting these beautiful young South Africans at a recent Own Your Freedom dialogue with learners from various schools in Gauteng about what it means, what freedom means to them. Together with the energy of these young people and our guiding continental development goals of Agenda 2063, we can achieve an Africa with strong cultural identity, values, and ethics. It is further underpinned by the AU's vision to build an integrated, prosperous, and peaceful Africa that is a dynamic force in the international arena. Cheers. Today marks 40 years since 1,500 Palestinian prisoners embarked on a hunger strike to demand for basic rights in Israeli jails. I was part of a group of South Africans who joined the Solidarity Hunger Strike on the 14th of May to highlight the continued injustices on the people and children of the Palestine. We should always remember that we were once beneficiaries of a global solidarity movement during our fight against apartheid, and we owe it to the world to give back. Honorable House Chairperson, it is a great honor to present the DOC's 2017-18 budget since the establishment of the DOC in 2014. A number of developments have taken place, and I will outline these later. I first want to highlight the vitally important subject of governance across various entities under the Ministry of Communications. Good governance is absolutely essential and is non-negotiable. In this regard, I'm pleased to say that the DOC, the GCIS, and all other entities continue to adhere to the prescripts of the PFMA and are on track to meet their performance indicators. Budgets are being spent wisely and are working at ensuring financial stability across all entities, while capacity constraints are being addressed through the filling of vacant posts. On the matter of budget, I hereby present the total budget for the department as $4,558 million over the medium-term expenditure framework period, which is allocated as follows: $1.45 billion in 2017-18, $1.520 billion in 2018-19, and $1.612 billion in 2019-20. In the current financial year, the DOC will be allocated $100 million, GCIS $404, Brand South Africa $194, FPB $91, ICASA $430, MDDA $30, and SABC $178 million, respectively. This funding will be used to accelerate our mission to create an enabling environment for the provision of inclusive and universally accessible communication services to all South Africans in a manner that promotes socio-economic development and investment through broadcasting, new media, print media, and other new technologies and brand the country locally and internationally. The Ministry of Communications is mandated to implement Chapter 15 of the NDP, which is translated to Outcome 14 on nation building and social cohesion. With the NDP as our anchor, we have been working hard to ensure citizens have access to information, which is a crucial tool in ensuring they are able to claim their rights and move their lives forward, united by common goals and a sense of patriotism. Our cherished goal is to ensure that all South Africans are informed on what is going on around them. This was always not the case. The DOC, the GCIS, and various entities will continue to do more to increase access to government communications and services so that citizens are informed about our policies and programs and can access services in order to improve their lives. I am sure you would agree with me on the vital need of ensuring that our communication dividend benefits all South Africans. A firm foundation for the effective functioning of the department has been laid with the approval of the organizational structure and the 2015-16 to 2019-20 strategic framework. In its first years of operations, the DOC received a clean audit for 2015-16. The department will ensure to strengthen its internal controls and compliance to the legislative prescripts during implementation of our strategic goals and objectives. House Chairperson, since its inception, the DOC has hit the ground running. Broadcasting digital migration remains a flagship program of the department, and it has the potential to improve the lives of all South Africans. The rollout of the program further brings tangible benefits that will have a lasting impact across our society and economy. These include the revitalization of the electronic manufacturing industry. This development would also see South Africa leading the continent in manufacturing the integrated digital television. I am happy to say significant progress has been made in the implementation of the DTT program. To date, we have switched off 18 analog transmitters in the core towns of the SKA, and we have registered 185,000 qualifying households. My department will be working to promote media diversity and media transformation that advances our democracy, ensuring all South Africans are given a choice and a voice. In the words of renowned American linguist, philosopher, historian, social critic, and political activist, one of my favorite authors, Noam Chomsky, public opinion can be influential. The media can too be influential. In the era of fake news and misleading narratives, these words ring true. Our interactions and discussions with the industry and key stakeholders will therefore further extend the phenomenon of fake news and how it has the potential to harm democracy by driving false and misleading narratives. This must go hand in hand with discussions on racism and hate speech. According to an input by Abongile Vanga at the Fake News Roundtable held on Wednesday this week, the solution for fake news will not be found in technology. Rather, it will be found through extensive engagement between the journalism profession, government, and civil society on what the parameters we wish to put in place when defining what this phenomenon actually is. Once all social partners define the general applicable standards of what is fake news and what is not, it will be easier to communicate a South African perspective. Print and broadcast media organizations can learn from some of the best practices at the FPB, who have publicly consulted on standards aimed at articulating what child sexual abuse material is. These standards are universally applicable for any company wishing to distribute material within the Republic of South Africa. As we finalize the community broadcasting support strategy after consultations with affected stakeholders, we will continue to focus on regulatory policy transformation and funding for the sector through the MDDA. The budget vote takes place during exciting times with digital convergence driven largely by innovation and creativity, opening new possibilities and opportunities for our citizens. On the policy front, we have exciting plans to capitalize on these new opportunities. The draft white paper on audiovisual and digital content for South Africa will be submitted to Cabinet for approval to be gazetted for public comments after consultation with relevant stakeholders and provinces. It is envisaged to be published in the Government Gazette at the end of July 2017. We will ensure that the white paper is aligned with integrated ICT white paper approved by Cabinet to ensure efficiency and effectiveness of policy within the ICT sector. Deputy Minister Stella Ndabeni. During 2017-18, we intend finalizing our work around the Broadcasting Amendment Bill of 2015 in order to develop and implement a stable corporate governance model on the long-term stability and sustainability of the SABC. We are committed to a strong, independent, and relative public broadcaster which is accountable and performs optimally. Chairperson, I'd like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the work of the staff at the SABC. These are dedicated media professionals who continue to work night and day to ensure that the SABC continues to educate, inform, and entertain South Africans in all official languages. We will ensure that the SABC platforms continue to drive meaningful content that touches the lives of ordinary people daily and assists them to make informed decisions. Honorable members, in the coming year, we will continue to support and build our community media sector. The importance of community media cannot be overstated. They're often at the heartbeat of vibrant, smaller communities. Since 1994, the footprint of community media has grown steadily and has begun to emerge as an alternative voice to the mainstream media. We must therefore ensure that community radio remains true to the purpose of informing, educating, and entertaining our communities. I view the community broadcasting sector as a channel to bring citizens and government closer and ensure community members are included in relevant government public participation processes. The MDDA is intensifying our support for the community media sector. We are pleased that in the current financial year, the MDDA will present the 10-year impact study, which seeks to assess the effectiveness of the impact made since the MDD's inception in 2002. The MDDA must continue supporting projects that promote the active role of people with disabilities into the sector and placing greater emphasis on correcting gender imbalances. More on the MDDA will be laid out by the Deputy Minister. The Film and Publications Board has a critical role to play, and we will then be tabling the Films and Publication Amendment Bill of 2015, which will provide a broader understanding and skilling of children, youth, parents, and teachers to deal with the new digital environment. Deputy Minister Mahambehlala will expatiate more on this one as well. Honorable Chairperson and members, radio and TV will deliver public value broadcasting by supporting the 5 key priorities set by government, namely job creation, education, health, rural development, eradication of crime and crime combating, including our 9-point plan. The work of Brand SA remains crucial in bringing together our socially diverse nation while striving to unite people through their love for our country. To manage the brand reputation, Brand SA conducts research and analysis of domestic and international perceptions of the nation brand. Through analysis of external indices, Brand SA is able to measure the performance of the nation. The outcomes of these analyses are shared with shareholders, with stakeholders for better understanding of the national brand and to inform decision-making. Recently, South Africa took 2nd place in the Africa Competitiveness Report, and the country's global ranking for 2016-17 improved with 9 places from 46 to 47 out of 138 countries. This work is vitally important, and we have all to play a role in building our nation. Now is the time for the spirit of patriotism and optimism. Now is the time for all South Africans to play their role as conscious brand ambassadors. All too often, outside investors only get to hear the negative stories about our great nation. It is up to us to highlight the many positive things about our nation and our people. Brand SA, thank you, honorable members. Brand SA will lead this charge by using various multimedia campaigns, national TV and radio, and internationally CNN and CNBC to better profile the image of South Africa locally, in our continent and abroad. The messages will be further amplified by Brand SA in collaboration with the National Treasury and other departments in the economic cluster on platforms that are created globally. ICASA is currently working to increase competition in the broadcasting sector with an investigation into South Africa's pay TV industry. It is also working to promote choice and diversity in the free-to-air TV broadcasting sector in South Africa. A notice of inquiry into subscription television broadcasting has been published, while an invitation to apply for commercial free-to-air television broadcasting service and multiplex 3-spectrum licenses has also been published. The new local content regulations published in 2016 for effective and impactful broadcasting will be effective in 2017 and for TV broadcasting services in March 2018. The implementation of the local content quotas for the current regulations shows that sound and TV broadcasting services are already generally compliant with these quotas. During the 2017-18 financial year, ICASA will facilitate investment and access to broadband infrastructure for sustaining socio-economic development. It will also promote competition and facilitate access to a broad range of communication services at an affordable cost. This now brings me to the work of the GCIS, which remains an integral part of the Department of Communications and to citizens having access to information. Next year will mark the 20th anniversary of the GCIS, and this milestone offers us a great opportunity to evaluate its impact and effectiveness of its founding principles. We profoundly thank many architects of this system and hope that they will celebrate this great milestone with us next year. We salute great compatriots like Mr. Joel Nechitenje, Mr. Esop Pahad, and Mr. Tony True. As a ministry, we have a responsibility to narrow the gap between government and the people by ensuring access to government information and constantly communicating the work of government. Our work is to inspire hope and empower citizens with tools to meaningfully change their lives and that of their communities. Over the 2017-18 MTF periods, the GCIS will continue focusing on providing strategic communications and facilitating citizen participation through our conventional forms of communications as well as new cutting-edge products. Over the medium term, the department plans to directly engage with communities through 10,458 outreach programs. During these programs, we will be taking government to the people in the villages and communities, in the communities they live. There is no doubt that our government works and continues to change lives. Many South Africans who reside in the most far-flung parts of the country will attest to this. We will continue to reach out and be part of the changes aimed at bringing a better life in the villages, taxi ranks, in shopping malls, and throughout the length and breadth of our country. Honorable members, to help government communicators to better convey messages to citizens, we will hold 14 strategic engagements with them during this financial year. We applaud many of the government communicators who continue to improve their competencies, and this instance acknowledge the Government Communicators Program, which is now accredited at National Qualification Framework Level 3. This program has been running for more than a decade and requires more support from all government departments. Honorable members, having outlined our plans and programs, allow me to briefly touch on some of the highlights that the GCIS has achieved in the past financial year. The government communications policy has been finalized and will soon be taken to Cabinet for approval. This policy seeks to establish norms and standards to professionalize and strengthen the government communication system to ensure that it is well integrated, better coordinated, and professional, and allows for citizens to interact with government. The GCIS has given support to the community radio sector through the placement of adverts and conducting radio shows on community radio. A fortnight ago, we were celebrating the success of Eden FM in George in the Southern Cape, which has been operating for 14 years, giving services to communities in the Karoo, Hezequa, Canaland, Knysna, Platte, and Uniondale, which also happen to be my constituencies. The GCIS has continued to conduct media placement on behalf of government departments.
1 minute left, Minister.
And agencies. Through this budget, the ministry seeks to, among others, improve universal access to broadcasting services, ensure equitable allocation of spectrum to public, private, and community players, broaden access to information by all citizens, support the growth and development of creative industries, manage digital broadcasting migration, and market the country locally, regionally, and internationally. The business sector also plays the most crucial role from the perspective of innovation, technology advancement, growing the economy, creating jobs, and making South Africa internationally competitive. The ministry will at all times support and work with all private sector players. We will support their development, growth, and competitiveness. However, we wish to warn against oligopoly, prohibitive costs, and uncompetitive behavior. During this past year, we've accelerated our work of ensuring that our people derive benefits from the communications dividend. There is every reason to be confident in our future.
Honorable
And working
Minister,
together, we can
your
ensure
time
that
is
more
up.
South Africans derive benefits from the communication space at accessible and reasonable costs. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank
Nyalo sitawucela lilunga lehloniphekile usihlalo welkomiti babe Maxekwane.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and greetings to the Minister, Ayanda Dlodlo, Deputy Minister Thandima Mbehlala, members of Parliament present, members of the Portfolio Committee, Chief Whip of the Majority Party present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, comrades and friends. I must upfront say that the ANC supports the budget vote 3. Honorable Chair, as we started this 5th Parliament in 2014, declared as the activist Parliament, based on the 53rd resolutions of the African National Congress in support of the National Development Plan. I nearly said democratic revolution. The President restructured the ICT sector by proclaiming the formation of a new department and reconfiguration of an existing one. Such a move was necessary considering the slow pace of transformation in the communications sector, still dominated by few companies. The intent of such reconfiguration was also to rationalize some state institutions and consolidate the communication sector such that government plays a catalytic role, particularly on reversing the communication sector apartheid-oriented patterns of ownership, control and distribution, to leverage on policies already developed to deepen people's democracy by way of access to regular government activities and information in a manner transparent and accountable, consolidation of government institutions that serve the purpose of communications and branding of the country, i.e. the FPB previously reported to Home Affairs when GCIS reported to the Presidency, and that government communication should reach all citizens and be in all languages. Such consolidation was necessary to ensure a cohesive strategy to the transformation of the communication sector. Central to this commitment is the review of the implementation of the ComTask report recommendations and the ruling party's commitment to increase financial and other resources to support transformation and efficiency of the communication sector. Now more than ever, in the advent of the rise of fake news, the importance for a coordinated national communication strategy is evident as a basis to uphold the constitutional values of our democracy. While national dialogue is harnessed through a diverse debate, it is important that government is able to communicate with one voice and articulate accordingly programs of government in a coordinated fashion. We are concerned about the funding challenges that threaten to render the budget vote irrelevant. Chairperson, I want to pay particular attention to the budget constraints of the department and its entities, and pay attention to the entities where such budget constraints can have a negative effect to the new democratic dispensation and the ideals of our Constitution. Allow me to qualify the latter statement. Communication sector has in the past hit hard by the coverage phenomenon, not to mention the rapid technological advancements that put tremendous pressure on our government and its quest to make its citizens relevant in an information society and knowledge economy. However, we still have a mandate as a signatory to many international treaties that have direct bearing on the success of our economy and its people. It is with this context that we base our argument for faster transformation such that our people, culture, and heritage remains relevant in a globalized world. The relevance of locality will always play a part to ensure that our people maintain and grow the aspects that make South Africa unique. On NDP objectives, 2014-19 electoral mandate specific to the budget vote focus on the radical economic transformation, radical economic growth and job creation, contributing to a better Africa and better world, social cohesion, and nation building. The challenges of the country are indeed unique in nature and indigenous to South African political landscape. These non-transformation practices reflect negatively on our government and its quest to meet the constitutional obligations for a robust communication sector that supports the democratic principles of the Republic as enshrined in our Constitution. If we do not, as Parliament, give particular attention to this budget vote, we stand a chance of reversing the positive progress achieved thus far, albeit that it is insufficient, and the environment continues to transform at a rapid pace that overtakes the legislative, policy, and regulatory processes of government. Currently, the department faces a multitude of challenges as a result of budget constraints. To begin with, the department has been struggling to operate independently of the GCIS, posing serious risks to the smooth running of the department in order for it to meet the legislative mandate. Coming to the DTT. South Africa is at the brink of missing the ITU, which is International Telecommunications Union deadline for switch off and analog transmitters shut up. As a result, it's written in the speech. Shut up is written in the speech of the many issues, including the clarity around encryption, which the ETV has taken government. Sorry.
Can you pause? I just want to remind members again not to use unparliamentary language. Shut up is an unparliamentary language.
No, thank you very much. I'm sorry.
So can we please, Honorable Member, can I finish my ruling? Can we please ask the member to withdraw?
I'm very sorry, Chair. I withdraw.
Thank you very much.
South Africa is at the brink of missing the ITU, as I said. The proliferation of digital TVs means that South Africa was still debating on the policy new TV sets with built-in digital transmitters. This is important. We're being rolled out across the world. Here we are arguing about control access, and yet the technology has developed further, rendering this very set-top boxes redundant. This means that by the time the rollout of STBs to the broader public takes place, there will be TV sets available to the market that have internal digital transmitters. Coupled with this will be a technological dumping of old TV sets under the guise that they are digitally ready. Our citizens will buy these TVs at exorbitant price and find out later that in actual fact, they bought analog TVs. This is a very serious challenge that the country faces now, and it is the commitment of the Portfolio Committee to attempt to stimulate debate around this. On SABC and MDTA, as it stands, we have witnessed how some of the entities reporting to the department have dominated the news for all the wrong reasons. In particular, the SABC, which in recent times has been consistent in the erosion of public trust. Fundamental to the challenges of the broadcaster is the funding model, which in earnest, Honorable Chairperson, Parliament has failed to build and maintain public confidence of the South African Broadcasting Corporation by ensuring that this national key point entitled with the public broadcasting mandate is adequately funded. Honorable Chair, Parliament is responsible to ensure adequate funds are made available to key programs that support the attainment of the National Development Plan goals. Also at the SABC, troubles is the challenge of governance. It is commitment of the Portfolio Committee to ensure that the public broadcaster returns to its former glory and the public trust is restored. We commend the work of the ad hoc committee into the fitness of the SABC board and the subsequent recommendations made to Parliament. Our immediate focus is ensuring that the interim board is able to carry out its mandate as it has started within the prescribed 6 months, as per the inquiry on SABC report and recommendation. It is of utmost importance that we also focus our energies on ensuring that SABC is financially stable. We must raid the culture of unnecessary payouts of staff, and in fact, ensure that we retain skilled and experienced staff. Over the past 10 years, the SABC staff had paid over 40 million rands in payouts to CEOs and other senior staff members, and this cannot be business as usual.
Honorable Chair, your time is expired.
Honorable members and staff, honorable members, the staff morale is so low, and we need to do something.
On that note,
thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Honorable Fundam.
Thank you, Chairperson. I would like to begin my speech by again welcoming Minister Ayanda Dlodlo and Deputy Minister Thandi Mahambehlala to the Communications Ministry. I've said this before and I'll say it again. We want you to succeed in this portfolio. We want you to succeed in restoring good governance and public and industry confidence in this department, something that was completely destroyed by your predecessor, Faith Mothambi. It is a tragedy that Mothambi has not been held accountable for a tenure that was nothing short of catastrophic, especially for the SABC. I would like to remind this House that the 60-day deadline for the laying of criminal charges, as set in the report of the Ad Hoc Committee on the SABC inquiry, expires on 5 June 2017. That is in 10 days. It was a recommendation in this report, adopted by parties in the National Assembly, including the ANC, for Parliament to lay criminal charges against persons who misled or provided false information during the inquiry. Minister Mothambi was indeed one of those people, and as such must be held accountable in terms of the powers and privileges and executive ethics code. Honourable Chairperson, over the next 2 years, while the ANC is still in power, Minister Dlodlo has the opportunity to be the antithesis of Mothambi, or risk her legacy being that of Minister Dololo. Over the next 2 years, the DA would like to see her bring much-needed stability, legislative and policy certainty, root out corruption, and deliver quality communications, educational, and entertainment services to South Africa's people. The DA will, of course, be there at every single step to hold the minister accountable to ensure that she does not fail the people of this country. I would like to devote the rest of my speech to assisting the minister in this task. The DA is not a party that is only about pointing out problems, but we also provide solutions. As a first step, I think it would be very important for the minister to be open and honest about where the problems are and what the solutions will be. She has done so thus far, but I will caution her not to fall into the trap of shrouding the Department of Communications and its entities in secrecy, quite ironic, as her predecessor did. Keep South Africa informed at all times about the work of government, but do so without being the minister of propaganda. Let the people of South Africa be the ultimate judge about the government's work. The role of GCIS, therefore, is not to disseminate propaganda, but to inform. It is also not there to send out media advisories on behalf of obscure pro-Zuma WhatsApp groups. Honourable Chairperson, the Department of Communications is allocated a budget of 1.3 billion for the 2017-18 financial year. By the admission of the minister's own officials, this amount is too little, and under severe economic pressure, the department runs risk of running out of money before the year is done. It was therefore quite alarming to hear that the department intends on purchasing new cars for the minister and her deputy. I again urge the minister to reject these purchases and set the example of austerity for the rest of government. Do not become yet another minister wa Benzi. Chairperson, the minister's biggest task is maintaining much needed oversight over the department's entities without unduly interfering. It is imperative that the relationship between the ministry and its entities is codified in a publicly available shareholder compact so it can be subjected to constant scrutiny. The biggest problems are obviously at the SABC. We are very pleased that the interim board is steadfastly implementing the recommendations of the SABC inquiry report. The DA commends the interim board for the stellar work that they have done thus far. It is our worry, however, that the interim board appears to be moving rather slowly in instituting disciplinary proceedings against staff implicated in causing the rot at the SABC, such as CFO James Aguma and former company secretary Teresa Geldenes. It is unfathomable why these two are not on suspension, and Ms. Geldenes is said to be assisting in the SIU forensic investigation. That is like asking a fox to watch the hen house. Both should be suspended immediately and subjected to disciplinary proceedings. Together with the SABC board, we would also like to see the minister set up a panel of experts to investigate innovative means to increase the SABC's funding. At 178 million, the funding provided by government to the SABC is obviously quite insufficient. The solution to this, however, is not additional license fees for mobile devices. The DA will stand firmly in opposition to any further taxation of the already overburdened taxpayer. Chairperson, I've also had several complaints from musicians that payola is still very much in existence at SABC radio stations. Music played on the public broadcasters' radio stations should be chosen on merit, not based on who has the biggest bribe. I will be submitting a formal request to the department for a full-scale inquiry into payola at SABC radio stations and for all staff implicated to this to be brought to book. Restoring staff morale at the SABC is of utmost importance. It was absolutely heartbreaking to hear talented staffers at the SABC recounting gut-wrenching accounts of being hounded and terrorized by Hlaudi Motsoneng and his enforcers because they refused to dance to his beat. It is a disgrace that to date, SABC's investigation into the attacks and the threats against the SABC 8 have not been finalized. I would strongly suggest that the minister personally request an update for the police ministry about this investigation. How is it that our journalists are terrorized in their own homes and one even shot in the face and not a single person has been arrested? With regards to the other equally important entities in this portfolio, at the FPB, it is important that the issues relating to its top leadership are resolved in a new CEO, COO, and CFO appointed urgently. It must never happen again, Minister, that the entities in this portfolio table badly drafted unconstitutional legislation in Parliament. The FPB Amendment Bill is a legal quagmire that has taken this committee over a year to finalize, and it will take longer still because that is just how bad that bill is. The ongoing litigation between ICASA and the Minister of Telecommunications regarding spectrum auctioning must also be resolved. There is absolutely nothing wrong with ICASA seeking to auction off its spectrum in order to increase wireless access in South Africa to boost economic growth and job creation. Finally, Chairperson, I would like to thank my colleagues in the Portfolio Committee on Communications from across the political spectrum under the chairpership of Humphrey Maxegwana, who was a little bit naughty earlier. I think this is a great, he was naughty.
Honorable Van Dam, you are equally naughty. You didn't say Honorable Maxegwana.
Honorable Maxegwana. I think this is a greatly improved committee from previous ones. Although we have very heated debates and we disagree often, I believe most of us are committed to fixing the problems in this portfolio. I look forward to working with you over the next 2 years, maintaining vigorous oversight over the Department of Communications. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Ilunga lihloniphekile umhlonishwa uMkwena.
Rale dumedisa. Dumedisa mhlompehi modulasetulo.
Order, honorable members. There is a speaker on the podium. Honorable Macpherson, you can come closer to the Deputy Chief Whip. Okay, thank you.
Let me state from the onset that the EFF rejects the budget vote 3 of the Department of Communication. The reasons are 3. 1, the purpose of the Broadcast Act of 1999, amended in 2002, amongst others, was to establish a strong, committed, and independent broadcasting service which will service the needs of all South Africans. Central to the purpose of the Act is an important role of fulfilling the public's right to know. Hence, an independent, adequately funded, and accountable public service broadcaster is a crucial component of the public's right to know. This department must fight until the SABC, what the SABC must be, an independent broadcaster that serves to inform the public, impart ideas, and respect journalistic freedom. And this is why it must move with swift movement to appoint a permanent, credible, and capable board and leave the SABC to perform its constitutional mandate with journalistic freedom, independence, and healthy, distant proximity from government and ANC politics. 2, 3 years later, we are still not clear why Mr. Zuma decided to split the telecommunications and communications as departments, a misguided decision which has led to nothing but duplication, confusion, and waste of resources. While international trends and innovation is moving towards streamlining and integration of broadcasting and communication, this administration has decided to do the opposite. And unlike the previous minister who was incompetent, we hope the current one is effective. That is besides the issue, because the issue here is that the department should never have been created in the first place, and bringing in a new minister will not solve anything. Under its stewardship, ICASA is still not performing its mandate and has no teeth. The GCIS is not effective. It's not an effective body. It peddles propaganda, and its mandate is confusing and duplicate in character. 3, the Department of Communication to even suggest that implementation of broadcast digital migration got off to a slow start is misleading the public. The truth is that incompetent people with corrupt intent were tasked with the implementation of the migration, and they have failed to do so. As a result, the migration deadline was postponed to 2018, a decision that was never substantiated with cogent argument. We stand here as the EFF to make the following proposal. It is never too late to close this department and reintegrate it into telecommunications. Minister Ayanda Dlodlo as effective as we hope she is, can go back to public service, and the president, and if the president insists on Minister Mutambi in his cabinet, she can be minister without portfolio. The EFF has long called for the amendment of the ICASA Act and to make the institution a Chapter 9 institution. No amount of propaganda and so-called good story to tell will change the fact that the ANC has reached its expiry date and we must move on. The GCIS is not performing its duty. Thank you very much.
Ngiyalokudala ucela ilunga lehloniphekile umhlonishwa uFan Nermeve. Malunga hloniphekile lendlu yesishamthetho. Masitiphathe njengamalunga kukhona sikhulumi lesesikhona lesitawubeka umlayeto waso ngiyanicela ninabe kunene nitiphathe kahle. Yebo. Lunga lehloniphekile ungaqhubeka.
Honourable House Chairperson, let me at the outset, on behalf of the IFP, congratulate the Minister and the Deputy Minister on their appointments. The IFP pledges our support to both of you. And let me also at the outset again thank the people of Mputu who voted overwhelmingly for the IFP in yesterday's by-elections. We thank them for trusting the IFP.
Honourable members.
We hope that the people of Mputu's story will be... We hope...
Honourable Hadebe, let's allow the member to rejoice a bit. Can we...
Honourable Speaker,
what is the point of order?
Rise on a point of order.
What is the point of order?
Informed by Rule 68.
What?
Irrelevance.
Not at all. No, I'll get there. I'll get there. Wait. I'll get there. I'll make it
Honourable member.
I'll make it relevant.
While I appreciate Honourable Chief Whip your point, but I had already allowed that the member, she was within her rights to congratulate and thank the people.
Hang on.
She can proceed with her speech
So
now.
let me repeat. I thank the people of Mputu for voting for the IFP overwhelmingly in the by-election. And we hope that the people's story will be told and that the seismic change we are seeing in the body politic of South Africa that will be adequately reflected on the SABC's radio and TV stations. Honourable House Chairperson, the IFP recognises that the battle to save the SABC is far from over. Almost 5 years ago, the IFP marched to Auckland Park. We did so because our public broadcaster had become a state broadcaster. It was no longer the voice of all South Africans. Overwhelming evidence to this effect was recently presented to the ad hoc committee probing the affairs of the SABC. The committee also heard how successive SABC boards had failed to carry out its duties and how its chairpersons had failed to provide leadership. It also heard of the abuse of power by executives, rendering the SABC's governance structures weak. But this begs the question, what had led to the SABC being managed by successive, weak and incompetent boards? The IFP has always argued that the process of appointing SABC boards is a deeply flawed process. It relies on us as politicians to recommend names to serve on this board, a process that some in the ANC has routinely abused. Political interference has been built into the system and ruthlessly exploited. At the heart of the crisis were individuals who ran the SABC like it was their own personal property. They feared no one. At the heart of the crisis was a captured board, captured newsrooms, and an editorial policy that so desperately tried to shield the ANC from negative publicity. This situation must never repeat itself again. And now the interim board must try to unravel the mess. The IFP supports them in this massive undertaking, and we commend them for the great work that they've done so far. But Minister, we also need to have a conversation here at Parliament as to how we start to appoint SABC boards that are no longer beholden to politicians, but that are truly independent and a true reflection of our society at large. And it must happen here at Parliament before we embark on a process of finding another permanent board for the SABC. Money lost to corruption and mismanagement must be recovered. Some guilty parties, such as Mr. Motwaneng, Ms. Faith Mutambi, Mrs. Ellen Shabalala, and Mr. Ben Ngubani, must be personally held responsible. This will also assist the SABC in repairing some of its reputational damage it has suffered over many years, failing which the SABC will struggle to regain the public's trust and reverse its declining viewership. And let me also state that the IFP rejects the proposal for fees for mobile devices, and we believe that vacant posts must be filled without further delay. It also remains unthinkable that while the SABC is facing financial ruin, while it cannot pay hard-working local artists and performers, that Mr. Motsoeneng continues to earn a whopping 4 million rand something salary for doing nothing. We are hopeful that the hearing into his conduct will be completed swiftly. Chairperson, I recently had the privilege of spending a week with 4 journalists of the SABC 8. What struck me about them was that despite the fact that they were had been harassed, threatened, and vilified by the likes of Mr. Motsoeneng, their deep loyalty and commitment to the public broadcaster remained intact. They, like many of the other hardworking journalists here at Parliament and elsewhere, remain the vanguards of the values and ethics that the SABC should espouse. We thank them for their service to the nation. Minister, at the outset of your speech, you had conveyed condolences to all the women and children who had lost their lives due to gender-based violence. And I would like to make a plea to you today. I also serve on the Portfolio Committee of Social Development and Women in the Presidency. Government has got a flagship call center which is meant to assist women that face abuse at home and elsewhere. But this government call center is invisible. And I would like to appeal to you to make sure that you use GCIS and the SABC to ensure that this call center is widely publicized so that every woman and every child knows about this call center and is able to access it. In conclusion, we support the recommendations of the Portfolio Committee as it pertains to the other entities. And for the very first time in a long time, the IFP will support your budget. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mahambehlala, the Deputy Minister of Communications. And also for her, while she has been a serving member, she's in her capacity giving her maiden speech.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Honorable Minister of Communications, Ms. Ayanda Dlodlo, leadership of entities reporting to our department, distinguished guests, fellow South Africans, allow me to greet you. As we mark Africa Month, it would be remiss of me not to condemn the high concentrations of patriarchy and the concentrated violence against women and children. I stand here as a woman and invoke the words of immortal African revolutionary Thomas Sankara, and I quote his words. The revolution and women's liberation go together. We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or out of a surge of human compassion. It is a basic necessity for the revolution to triumph. Women hold the other half of the sky. Close quote. Men must know that women play an integral part in our society. Any form of violent abuse and oppression against them is a betrayal of the African Revolution and its values. House Chairperson, members of Parliament, the call to build a better Africa starts here with us. During the State of the Nation address, the President of the country, His Excellency President Zuma, articulated a problem that plagues our society. He said, I quote, 22 years into our freedom and democracy, the majority of Black people are still economically disempowered. They are dissatisfied with the economic gains from the liberation. Fellow South Africans, President Zuma call for the radical and socio-economic transformation is the call for industries to reflect the composition of all those who live in this country. It is a call for South Africa not be ruled by corporatocracy. And fellow South Africans, President Zuma, honorable members, as the Ministry of Communications, our role is not only to articulate what radical socio-economic transformation means, but also to implement it in the industry through various entities we oversee. Our interventions as a ministry need to form the basis of structural transformation in the media industry, and through the NDP, we are required to transform the psychological structure of our society by creating an environment in which social cohesion thrives and nation building is the order of the day. This will not be achieved by casual and sentimental activities. We must be committed to one simple cause of action, that is the implementation of the Freedom Charter in its truest form. Our people can no longer stomach the modification of an economic system they did not design. Fellow South Africans, the Minister has entrusted me with the full responsibility of working with Films and Publication Board to ensure that television content, games and films consumed by our children is suitable for their consumption. In the next month, we will mark the opening of the Child Protection Week. With the evolution of technology and digitization of broadcast media, it is critically important that our society is educated about the role of FPB, which is to ensure that our kids interact with suitable content, amongst other things. This nation has a long history of socio-politically motivated violence, which has sustained itself in many parts of the country. This is evidenced in the high occurrence of criminal violence with severe consequences for children. This requires us as government to have an intersectional and integrated collaborated response. Through the work of FPB, we are at the forefront of safeguarding our society from harmful online content, which is made more accessible due to the greater access to inform and service in the digital era. To combat the prevalence of explicit online content, the FPB is intensifying its awareness campaign to empower citizens, particularly children, on being responsible digital citizens. The board will roll out cyber safety awareness campaigns in 6 provinces, targeting 200 parents, 800 learners, and up to 400 educators. Research commissioned by FPB with the University of South Africa has shown that children have been desensitized to violent content while adults no longer concern themselves with violence in the media. This is of particular concern as close to 40% of films and games rated by FPB contain mild to extreme violence. But there is hope, fellow South Africans. In a first of the African continent, the FPB, in collaboration with UNISA, has established a content classification academic qualification that will improve the quality of education and skills development in the sector. This will benefit society and provide a more efficient service to customers. The FPB has commenced implementation of its online content regulation system that moves the organization away from manual processes that often resulted in backlog. The FPB is working closely with our law enforcement agencies to ensure compliance. Last year, 39,441 CDs and DVDs valued at 3.9 million were confiscated. As the ministry, we will work closely with the Portfolio Committee to make amendments of the FPB Amendment Bill. I encourage all South Africans to participate in the consultation processes of the bill. It is through these conversations that we as a country can articulate our values and norms and how we would like to see them reflected through the media content we consume. Compatriots, in the gallery, we have the cast members and the producer of award-winning South African feature, Kalushi. This film won the Best Film Award at the Luxio African Film Festival in Egypt. Furthermore, Thabo Rametsi's portrayal of Kalushi earned him the Best Actor accolade in the BRICS International Film Festival in India. This extraordinary film tells the story of Kalushi, also known as Solomon Mahlangu. Kalushi is a young man of bravery against the apartheid regime.
Honorable Deputy Minister, they would like to see the person you just mentioned.
Listen to my speech.
Order. Is Thabo here?
Honorable Chairperson, you are disrupting me. Can I proceed?
I have not taken your minutes. It's just that members were howling and asking to see the person. If the member is not here, thank you very much. You can proceed.
Chairperson, the generation and Yizo actor is here amongst us as Member of Parliament. Applaud. This extraordinary film tells the story of Kalushi, also known as
Deputy
Solomon
Minister,
Mahlangu.
There's a point of order.
No, Chair,
What's the point of order?
I appreciate the appreciation that I get from the members here, but it was 14 years ago. Can we get over it?
Can you take a seat, honorable
very
member?
much.
Order. Honorable members, that's not a point of order. It's a point of information. Thank you very much, but not relevant for today's debate. Continue, Deputy Minister.
Honorable Chairperson, Kalushi is a young man stood up bravely against the apartheid regime and was hanged by the unjust apartheid regime in the gallows of Pretoria Central Prison on the 6th of April, 1979. Coincidentally, on the 6th of April, it happens to be the day upon colonialism in the form of Jan van Riebeeck descended on our shores. It is Kalushi's statements which keeps the desire in us to ensure that South Africa becomes truly liberated, and I quote his words when he said, "My blood will nourish the tree that will bear the fruits of freedom. Tell my people that I love them. They must continue the fight." Close quote. We are Kalushi, and Kalushi is us. Biopic films of our national heroes form part of a vital historic narrative that tells the story of our country's proud resistance to colonialism and apartheid. These stories are relevant to all our generations, including young people searching for answers and seeking inspiration from our own national stories. I would like to congratulate the following individuals. Could they please stand as I mention their names? Mr. Mandla Dube, who is the director of this movie, unfortunately, he could not be with us today. Mr. Walter Ayers, the producer of this film, and all of the other actors who are represented by Mr. Zweli Dube, who is also an actor on Mubango. Honorable members, Zweli Dube portrays the character of an exiled commander of the People's Army, Umkhonto Wesizwe, Minister Ayanda Tlotlo. I am pleased to announce, Chair, that this ministry will also play its part over the next couple of months. It will also play its part over the next couple of months. We will be working closely with the team to screen Kalushi in communities whom traditionally would not have the means to view this film. In so doing,
you have got 1 minute.
In so doing, we educate community about fundamental parts of our history and use it as an opportunity to share awareness on how film content is classified by the FPB. Let me remind you that we have a duty to support the producers of local content in the arts and other industries. In so doing, we draft our own narrative and also create jobs in local industries as well as brand identity of our young people. Honorable Chairperson, it is high time that Parliament allows local community media and gives them full access to Parliament like mainstream media.
Honorable Deputy Minister, if you can round up, your time is up.
Thank you, Chairperson. A proper implementation of the DTT program will ensure that all South Africans are part of the digital revolution, particularly those in the community media space. This means that community radio stations can expand their broadcasts across the country. In the past month, I have visited a number of community radio stations across the country.
I'm sorry, Deputy Minister, your time
Thank
has
you very
expired.
much, Chair.
Honorable Kubisa. Honorable Kubisa.
Otin Pungan. Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Deputy Minister, Ministers present, Deputy Ministers, Honorable Members, guests in the gallery. Angisho ke ngithi mhlonishwa ngqongqoshe siya kuhalalisela no sekela ngqongqoshe siyanhalalisela emsebenzini, and you have our support as National Freedom Party, and we hope that you will be able to do this work with the necessary diligence, and of course you have a challenge ahead of you. But having said that, Chairperson, this department has an important mandate to develop an overarching communications and broadcasting policy and strategy for the country, to provide ways to disseminate information and publicity in order to promote and inform citizenry. And finally,
Order, honorable members, let's allow the speaker on the podium to be heard. Let's not converse loudly.
And finally, to promote and inform citizenry and to promote South Africa abroad as a brand to assist the country in its efforts to attract investment, foster economic growth, and creation of employment opportunities. Having said that, Chairperson, I think it is of paramount importance that, Honorable Minister, I touch on some of the very pertinent issues that were put forth by the ad hoc committee. I'm saying this, of course, taking into full cognizance that we have the chair of the portfolio committee and the interim board that has taken over. And we want to say we acknowledge the work that the interim board has begun to do, the vigor, and of course the courage with which they are doing their work. And I think that is commendable in light of what has been happening in the SABC in particular. And I believe, Minister, Deputy Minister, having said that, you have an arduous task ahead of you. There are recommendations, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, that were put forth by the ad hoc committee, such as there's remedial action that was proposed by the public protector. I think that will be actioned, and I've seen that the board has also begun to action some of the findings of the Auditor General, because I believe these are pertinent. We say these things with that patriotic spirit to ensure that we build SABC in particular. And of course, I've already said that you have our support. And also there are other matters that were reported by the ad hoc committee, and I believe that the portfolio committee is going ahead with them, with the interim board as well, like ensuring that you terminate those irregular deals and tenders, etc., because they were not parcel of the procedure, the way SAP should be working. And I've seen that also the interim board has begun to ensure that senior positions and middle managed positions are filled, because there's no organization that can function properly if there are vacant posts and people are acting in those positions. I believe then that that task will be done. And of course, dealing with corruption, just dealing with it head on, because it tarnishes the good name of the broadcaster. And I agree with other members that have said, it is not good news to hear that there is a shortfall of 509 million or so within the organization. It might be wrong because we get it from the media, but I hope that you'll deal with that, turning around the finances of the SABC, dealing with internal controls, dealing with audit measures within the SABC, because we have to ensure that we bring back that stature, that image of the organization. And of course, making sure that other entities do their work so that SABC becomes the mouthpiece of the public, has to inform in a non-partisan manner, accountable and efficient manner. I believe we have to bring this issue to the table, Honorable Minister, with an aim of building and working together. You have our support. We support the budget.
Thank you very much. Honorable Matisha. Order.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Please permit me to welcome the new Minister and her deputy. I hope that they will ensure that the working together that presently permeate the working committee is ossified. The portfolio committee, I want to emphasize, works together, and the majority of resolutions are arrived at in unison. Communications, the challenges that I'm talking about here, that face us as a country are momentous, and thus need enough resources, both material and financial. Hence, I don't know whether to support the budget or not. I say this because of, in my view, more is needed. Because having gone into the whole thing, having had discussions, having discussed this as the portfolio committee, we know that a lot has got to be looked into. Hence, I say that I don't know whether we should, at this stage, arrive at that particular stage. Now, the challenges I refer to include, but not limited to, the problems faced by the workers. I hear talk about the posts or positions which are not safe. Their future, the future of the workers in the media, both public and beyond, is not okay. And we need to talk about this and see how we can be able to have them protected. Some of these people are in the commercial media circles. We as a country need to talk about that and see how we can be able to have this handled. Now, the other thing is the time, that much time is given to the national, and very minimal time is given to the rural or smaller milieu. We must address that urgently. And I therefore, Minister, shall say that you and the committee, we need to sit down and look into that. It is a very serious problem. Now, I must thank, through you, Chairperson, the SABC board for having done their best. Thus far, they have been able to do their best, I want to emphasize. There have been very serious problems there. You have a man, for example, it's not him only, you have a man who gets even more than the president of the country per month. You have a man who gets bonuses of 14 million, and later he was supposed to get 33 million rand. But then we have said to the board, look into this so that we then can be able to deal with this as a matter of urgency. Mutwening cannot be allowed because SABC belongs to the people of our country. Now, there are other areas, such as ETV.
You've got half a minute, if you can round up, sir.
Okay, okay. Now, there are other media institutions, such as ETV. I remember about 2-3 years ago, we went and interacted with them and others as well, and we said we'll come and see them. We have not done that. I think we need to do that. But as I sit down, Chairperson, I'm saying that there are ones, such as ANN7, that have stolen our money, the monies of the people,
Honorable
and that
member,
has got to be
your time
returned.
is up.
But thank you very much, the board and the portfolio committee.
Thank you very much to you too. Honorable Machoba.
House Chairperson, Honorable Minister, Honorable Deputy Minister, Honorable Members, Honorable
Chief Whip of the Majority, the distinguished guests. Hence, I can debate here in Parliament without fear of reprisal. Thank you, Minister, for your commitment to taking up a campaign on violence against women, and would like to invite social partners to participate in the campaign. I call on ordinary citizens to support the clarion call for creating safer communities. I would also like to plead with the judiciary not to be lenient with the killer of Karapo Mukwena. The family must not be victimized twice. A victory of Karapo is a victory for all South Africans. My solidarity pledge to all men who continuing respecting the women. I saluted them, and I'm still continuing saluting them. The campaign is in line with you, Minister, the Department of Community Mandate of Caring, inspire hope and carries aspiration of our people. The entities under your leadership, Minister, are entrusted with enormous responsibility of creating a platform for South Africans to have a conversation with each other. This is a commitment that the ANC-led government made to its people. The other entities protect citizens from viewing content that might not be of value for both their ages and choice clarifications. It educates citizens to ensure that they are careful about the content they post about themselves, in particular children. Once and more, this is a reflection of ANC-led government to building a rights-based society and protecting vulnerable citizens. While the MDDA is responsible for an empire that citizens are able to use media platform to develop a common cause on issues that affect them. Through its financial support, it provides an opportunity for communities to identify common grounds and bridge the social class gaps. Open lines communication are critical for lasting solution into complex. The past financial year saw ongoing strides made in transformation of the media, with MDDA approving more community media projects that it had any previous year since it awarded its first project in 2004, and major initiative in progress that will positively impact on the future of the agency and its contribution to a sustainable and vibrant media sector. Despite the fact that transformation of the media remains a challenge for South Africans' democracy, the media landscape has changed considerably since 2004, with the MDDA being largest contributor to enabling access to control of and management of the sector by historical disadvantaged individual. Of more than 200 community radios, historically disadvantaged individual, of more than 200 community radio station existence, 135 were and more than 80 still are funded by MDDA. Honorable House Chair and Honorable members, considerable progress was made in 2016 and 2017 in developing a second, more encompassing strategy. The Khayelitsha Gugulethu social integration strategy in Western Cape, based on the existing radios Bonele in Khayelitsha, within community leaders from other townships, also indicating their wish be part of process in African communities, also radio stations. House Chair and honorable members, with greater access to the internet, advanced mobile devices, it becomes easier to access content, at times content which is harmful
Please
to children.
conclude.
The internet has become the biggest threat, not only to children, but to national security at large, despite its benefits when it comes to knowledge sharing, improved communication, education, entertainment. The internet is also haven to questionable characters and forces of darkness.
Thank you very
who
much.
prey on innocent.
Thank you.
The
Thank you.
ANC support the budget.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Minister, may I firstly, on behalf of the ACDP, congratulate the Honourable Minister and Deputy Minister on your appointments, and we wish you well. And we share your sentiments condemning acts of violence against women and children. And we as men need to do more. We on the Justice Committee also need to do more. And so I share hashtag not in my name. My particular interest, although I don't serve on this portfolio committee, is of course with the SABC, having served on the ad hoc committee. And we commend the interim board. It is making good progress in implementing the recommendations of the ad hoc committee. Thank you. It is also heartening, and I raised it in the Justice Committee, that the SIU should step in and assist the SABC, and I'm pleased that that recommendation is being implemented, because I believe the SIU will go a long way, and they are obtaining a speedy proclamation for the forensic inquiry into wasteful, irregular, and corrupt expenditure. Now, that inquiry was a learning curve for all of us that serve as MPs, and we trust, and from the ACDP side, that we'll be able to conduct similar investigations, such as into Eskom. Now, one of the telling findings was that the former minister, and this was a finding of Parliament, displayed incompetence in carrying out her responsibilities as shareholder representative. And we trust, Honourable Minister, that you will perform your duties in a far more efficient manner, and we do wish you well in this regard. We would urge the Portfolio Committee to be most vigilant, given the inquiry's finding that we, Parliament, now remember that's me as well, parliamentarians, may have relinquished our duty to hold the executive and consecutive boards to account. And this may have rendered Parliament, remember the finding was Parliament, including me, complicit in the gradual decline in good governance accountability at the SABC. So we have a very important role to exercise oversight. We also note and remind the Minister and the Portfolio Committee on the findings on the Broadcasting Amendment Bill. And if I understood you correctly, Minister, you were saying you were reconsidering that bill, but it does present problems for Parliament in as much it removes our role in the appointment and dismissal of board members, so we need to look at that very carefully. And we also, from my perspective, I studied the Auditor General's management letters, and that is something we need as parliamentarians to look into. We tend to focus on the Auditor General's reports, but the management letters that come in before, and in this regard, we were able to obtain that, indicated the SABC had a serious cash flow problem already at the end of last year, and we inserted that into the report. Clearly, we need to look at the refunding of the SABC, and we need to understand what ICASA requires them to do, those stringent conditions. And so we need to look at that, but at the same time, we need to stop cross-subsidization of rival broadcasters such as ANN7 and the DSTV. And what was also disconcerting to us was the intimidation that we saw of witnesses coming to Parliament, the SABC 8, and we are grateful that that matter is being attended to. We would like to commend all staff members of SABC and, of course, the other entities that are represented here for their commitment, and that we as Parliament are now stepping up our oversight role to ensure that proper oversight is expressed and done, and that these entities will fulfill their constitutional mandates. Minister, just a last concluding comment. As far as fasting in solidarity with Palestinian prisoners is concerned, we as Christians are taught to remember all those in prison as though we are there with them. And so we would also urge, and we would broaden our prayers in this regard to include all prisoners worldwide, and more particularly those vulnerable men and women who've been suffering for their faith and are being killed for their faith. And we see that those horrendous things that we saw in Syria and Iraq, where Muslims, Christians, Jewish people were killed for their faith. So let us also, from our side, we would urge a broadening of that to look at the persecuted church, persecuted faiths across the world. Thank you very much. We will support this budget vote. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swartz.
Honorable Chair, Minister, the Deputy Minister, the various institutions that you are leading, honorable members of Parliament, I greet you all in the name of a great country, South Africa. I think, Minister, the biggest challenge we're faced with is the understanding of the essence of communication. That even the kind of budget that we give to the department needs to interrogate whether we've got a common understanding about the essence of communication in nation building. Because the biggest problem, if there is no information, clarity is casualty. When people don't know, they get worried. If they continue not to know, they become tense. If they continue not to know, they fight or flight. And instability becomes the game of the day in the lack of clarity because of the absence of information. But how you have actually entered this department, you have demonstrated your understanding of that. A number of issues that were not understood about SABC, you quickly came to clarify them because you knew the toxicity of uncertainty, how it kills any nation. Now, until 1912, liberation struggle in South Africa would have been viewed as pure black versus white tussle. This situation would have at times, and it did at times, mobilize racial alliances. During this unfortunate era of division, humanity as a basis for human connect would have been sidelined in favor of racism and ethnic stereotypes. It is during this period that mere race and or ethnicity determined both human alliances and wars. Until 1912, in particular 1969, when our movement theorized our struggle for human triumph, became a preferred ideal to race and ethnicity. Once ANC theorized and communicated worldwide the purpose of the struggle, the world descended in our shores to pledge allegiance to the cause of humanity, not race. The South African miracle only came to fruition when humanity crossed racial lines to share or exchange their views on the basis of human interest outside racial trivialities. It is at this point that the great leaders of Luthuli, in dealing with the cynicism of racism and preferring to resolve our problems peacefully through communication and negotiations, he had this to say when he was asked what did he think the PAC stand for after splintering from the African National Congress. I quote, he said, "I'm not sure if I know. However, if they say Africa for Africa, I agree. But if they say Africa for the indigenous, they are no different from the enemy you are fighting. For you cannot fight a racially exclusive oppression with a racially exclusive resistance at the risk of confusing our children." What Albert Luthuli, the chief, was trying to do here, he was committing theoretically, as per our movement, the importance of articulating to those who did not understand what we stood for so that we can find one another. Our forebears knew that the defeat of these stereotypes cannot be an event, It calls for endless conversations amongst ourselves using all means at our disposal. And that's why Albert Luthuli asserted at all times that ours was a struggle against a race, ours was not a struggle against a race, but a racial system. I therefore appreciate, Honorable Minister, that interventions are made in actually understanding this, that unless communication is actually dealt with and we intervene, this historic mission of our country will become a pipe dream. I therefore appreciate, when you look at GCIS, the fact that the set of objectives that are aligned seek to deal with this matter. A responsive, cost-effective, complaint and business-focused organization, and amongst other listed objectives. In particular, a professionalized communication. Of course, enhancing image of government honestly. A service that promotes governance and a program that boosts the share of government's voice in public honestly. And a research investment that ensures that the manner in which we interact with our people is informed. This department is actually committing to ensure that 10,458 outreach programs are in place and publishing 111 editions of communicator products and production and distribution of 18.7 million copies of the Vukuzenzele, and the amount of money committed to intergovernment coordination is commended. In the citizen participation, a 1,200 communication development project and 1,000 community and stakeholder lesson visits per year. On the ICASA side, with their mandate, here they focus on the electronic communication, broadcasting, and postal services, the areas of their mandate. In taking this mandate forward, the authority has selected areas of focus, such as universal access, universal service, and access to broadcast services, improved organizational service delivery, common national identity and social cohesion, improved stakeholder and consumer experience. The authority is commended for organizational realignment process. And more importantly, ICASA's main responsibility is to ensure that what is communicated and accessible is fairly reflective of the diverse South African attitudes of our life. This is done through ensuring all South African languages are used and reach the entire human geography of our country. It is here where the attributes of developmental state should find expression. At the risk of losing time, the authority holds a vision for expansion and modernization of ICT sectors as enabler for economic growth. The vision finds expression in the following manner, titled National Outcome for ICT. Competitive market structure that can facilitate lower communication cost, countrywide availability of affordable broad infrastructure enabled through implementation of a digital agenda, and an agile institutional framework for effective regulation that enables the sector to meet stakeholder needs. And the 5-year plan continues to be adaptable to the following: migration from analog to digital broadcasting platform, increasing demand for broadband services, increasing demand for broadband services, and need for assignment of the radio frequency spectrum. I also want to draw your attention, Minister, to the risk they are articulating, in particular the budget issue. And I think this matter, all members of Parliament, because communication is key and because the objective of nation building in South Africa remains the primary one for a prosperous society. I dare say only when we converse, communicate, account.
Please conclude, Honorable Member.
Only when we converse, communicate, account to and amongst one another and the world, that will become a dependable, predictable, reliable nation, that we can unleash energies of all South Africans and that of the world for the pursuit of our fundamental noble nation to realize a national democratic society. Naturally, ANC would support the budget, but however, I wanted to say to FF, I agree with what you have said, but if you don't support the budget, how are we going to fund those things you're actually proposing?
Thank you very much, Honorable Fante.
Honourable Chair, members of the House, corruption, maladministration and wasteful expenditure can be traced back to almost every single communication entity. On 17 June 2015, due to the inept action by the department, our country failed to meet the analog switch-off date as was set by the International Telecommunication Union. During a committee meeting this month, we were informed that we could once again miss the 2018 deadline. It seems that in the ANC government, deadlines are delivery dates for failure. Vertragings in die uitrol van digitale migrasie het 'n groot impak op spektrumbeskiikbaarheid. Dit benadeel die uitsaaibedryf ernstig, veral met betrekking tot gemeenskapsmedia. 'n Moratorium op die lisensiering van gemeenskapsradio's in September 2015 kan nie gelig word nie as gevolg van die feit dat daar nie voldoende spektrum is nie. Die DA sien dat die ANC nie by belofte hou om gemeenskapsmedia en diversiteit te bevorder nie. It should come as no surprise to us, but there is also a delay in the finalization of the media transformation and diversity policy. According to ICASA, the white paper on audiovisual and digital content will take another 4 years to complete. The DA knows this will have a further impact on DTT immigration. Yet again, the ANC does not keep its promises. The largest budget increase in the department is seen in Programme 4, Entity Oversight, which increased by 94.3 million. However, no amount of money thrown at this problem will rectify the widespread maladministration in entities. There is also an increase of 33.1 million for communication and branding, which seems rather excessive in a country where citizens are literally starving. Ons sit met 'n entiteit soos Brand SA wat poog om Suid-Afrika te promoveer, terwyl die ANC-president sukkel om te tel hoeveel skade hy berokken. Rommelstatus dankse 'n rommelregering. Meer geld word spandeer aan die versterking van bestaande gemeenskapsmedia as om nuwe geleenthede te skep. Die DA versoek dat die befondsingsmodel van gemeenskapsmedia ernstig hersien word. Belastingbetalers betaal ongeveer 21 miljoen rand om BSA landhoofde in die VSA, China en Verenigde Koninkryk te akkommodeer. Die oogmerk om die land se reputasie te bestuur en te bemark. Basiese duplisering van SA toerisme se pligte. Beide entiteite het kantore in genoemde lande. Parlementêre vrae het uitgewys dat doelwitte in die Verenigde Koninkryk en VSA nie bereik is nie. Dit wil sê doelwitte vir 2 uit 3 lande was onsuksesvol. In die ekonomiese tyd waarin ons tans is landshoofde werklike prioriteit. In 2014, the MDDA had a vacancy rate of 50%, and until recently, the status remained unchanged. The chair of the board even appointed herself as acting CEO and lied about it in a committee meeting. We have nothing to show for all these increases, except a department and entities like the SABC that are so cooped up in corruption that they have failed to serve the people in South Africa. Die DA vra vandag, wat doen entiteite om geld te bespaar? Mutambi, Mutsuneng, Zuma, hoekom raak die ANC nie ordentlik van sy probleemkinders ontslaan nie? Watter vertroue boesem entiteite werklik by die publiek? Daar is net geen gevolge vir wanprestasie in hierdie regering nie. Corruption is killing opportunities. The ANC is killing opportunities. Just ask the 9 million people in South Africa that cannot find a job. We need to stop rewarding institutional failures. We need to stop investing in corruption.
Please conclude.
Come 2019, the South African public has the opportunity to vote against corruption and the failure of the system. I urge every citizen to make their vote count. Ons land verdien beter as die ANC.
Chairperson, ministers and deputy ministers who are still here, honorable members, distinguished guests. Let me first say men who rape, murder children and women do not deserve and are not worth to be called men. They are animals. I'm sure we'll propose to our chief whip, and he must convey this to other chief whips of all other parties, that they must mobilize men in parliament, including staff, to picket with the placards saying, "Not in our name." Honorable members, this is the year of O.R. Tambo. Let me open my speech by quoting Comrade President Mandela when he said about Comrade O.R. Tambo. In paying tribute to our Comrade President, I am addressing not only the unrivaled qualities and achievements of individual Oliver Tambo. I am addressing also the man as the crystallization and personification of what the ANC is and became under his leadership. Indeed, Chairperson, we are indebted to Comrade O.R. Tambo for his sacrifice and contribution in shaping our non-racial democracy. Chairperson, I want to focus my contribution to this debate by quoting ANC's characterization of the present communications environment. In its draft discussion document on communication, the ANC says, "We are in a contested communications environment characterized by rapid uptake of social media by many of our citizens. Social media use is fast surpassing traditional media consumption in countries around the world. Interconnectivity, whereby many sources of information are consumed on multiple devices. Ongoing battle of ideas has assumed global dimensions unprecedented since the advent of modern media, says the African National Congress. ANC calls for strengthening communication capacity of the executive and legislative branches of government. Develop a roadmap towards realization of Vision 2030 of the NDP. And within this context, develop a program towards the fourth industrial revolution. Radical transformation of the media industry and building of plurality of voices within society. Government guided by NDP must focus, as it have started in some areas, on preparing South Africa for digital economy and fourth industrial revolution, driven by increased use and adaptation of ICT tools in all human activities. Technological developments have now made machine-to-machine communication, robots and autonomous systems able to operate with or without human intervention in spheres of human activity. Fourth industrial revolution contains within it possibilities to disrupt current economic and social structures profoundly over the next 20 to 50 years. The task of South African government, including sector, is to plan effectively and position the country openly and engage proactively with rapidly evolving technologies. We invite the private sector to this endeavor. Available research estimates that by 2025, there will be more machine-to-machine communication than connected people in the world. This marked shift from personal contact to new trajectory driven by machine-to-machine communication will forever alter local, national, and global economic landscape. It is important that government focus on the impact of the impending disruptive changes on citizens and society, and ensure that the discussion is not about technology in and of itself or in isolation to its associated societal impact. Radical shifts in social and economic systems as a result of the fourth industrial revolution will include shifts across all industries and results in irreversible disruption of business processes of existing companies, reshaping how goods and services are produced, consumed, transported, and delivered. The fourth industrial revolution is expected to increase wealth of nations and individuals, surpassing figures attained during previous epochs. There will be winners and losers. Without government intervention, through policy formulation, there is a danger that technological changes can reinforce prevailing disparities, widen existing digital divide, perpetuate economic exclusion, with gaps in between the highest and lowest paid in society, exacerbate gender discrimination and social insecurity. Modern innovations in and of themselves will not automatically deal with existing social and economic challenges. It is likely that the fourth industrial revolution will reproduce some of inequalities and related challenges that have characterized the previous eras. These challenges will assume forms as those of the past, characterized by skewed distribution of resources between the have and have-nots and between nation states. Furthermore, it will have a serious impact on the distribution of incomes and jobs between and inside countries. To conclude, the ANC approach to the fourth industrial revolution is premised on the need to ensure shared growth and development, involving all citizens as active participants in the new economic and social environment. This is what the ANC is putting before you, South African people, to consider as we enter the fourth industrial revolution. In closing, I want to go back and contribute to those who have described what O.R. Tambo was and what he still to inspire us about. In closing, one of Comrade President O.R.'s attributes and qualities was his ability to listen to views of others, pay attention to detail, a capacity to unite people, reproduced himself through others, as shown by a caliber and quality of leaders he nurtured to later lead ANC. An ability to develop tactics and strategies to overcome difficult situations. Comrade O.R. Tambo was an outstanding communicator. Comrade Chair, I cannot close without sharing with you these very interesting developments. Wheels are coming off from the Mini Cooper unholy coalition between the DA and small opposition parties. We always knew that is coming. An unholy alliance founded on anti-ANC foundations and returning status quo of minority rule. Deep differences that have showed themselves openly in Nelson Mandela Metro Council between Deputy Mayor Bobani and Mayor Trollip points to more to come. And the fact that EFF and others voted with ANC on major issues of the agenda exposes DA of what it is.
Please
the
conclude.
representative of monopoly capital and white minority interests.
Thank
There
you.
will never be harmony of interests in a
Thank you.
situation where slave
Thank you, Honourable
masters
Member.
expect slaves to assist them to defend their system of slavery against a progressive Protestant movement
Thank you, Honourable Member.
that is bringing freedom to slaves. DA wants to dictate and impose
Time
its
is up.
agenda to small parties, but those who are committed to
Honourable
improve
Member.
the lives of the poor will resist that, as shown by Deputy Mayor Bobani. Viva Bobani, viva! Kuba Bobani, bakube! Bada!
Honor,